Chapter 1173. What? Aren't these words pointing at our noses and saying that our characters are not good? This fellow's standard of scolding people in circles is really not low, But you're a person who has overturned a boat full of people. You're going to incur the wrath of the public. In an instant, the crowd became agitated and began to speak out. You're saying that your character is good? If a person like you can be considered as having a good character, then everyone in the world is a saint. Guhan looked at Jun Moxie in disbelief and gritted his teeth. Do you even know the meaning of the word character? Character is a very mysterious thing. I can't be bothered to explain it to you. Jun Mo Xie shook his head in a very arrogant manner. Then he sat down on the recliner, and the recliner under his body flew up as if it was a feather and carried him into the interior of Tian Fa's camp. This old man dares to bet that you don't know what character is. Guhan's spittle flew everywhere as he scolded. Then he went back to meditate resentfully. This is too much of a blow. From a saint venerable to a third-level saint monarch, he had spent over 1,000 years of time. Countless times he had narrowly escaped death. Countless times he had hovered on the edge of life and death. Countless times he had almost died. And countless times he had escaped death. But this brat was clearly only a saint venerable a few days ago. But after a few days of sleep, he had passed the lightning tribulation, and he could no longer see through his cultivation. That could only mean one thing. This brat's current strength had already surpassed him. Where is there such a relaxing and easy way to level up? Guhan's heart was filled with shock, and he was even more aggrieved. Sleep, sleep, sleep first to soothe your emotions. At least out of sight, out of mind, So this world also had the Hugh spirit. But Saint Monarch Gu was destined to be disappointed, because he did not rest for the entire night. One moment, there would be a wave of heaven and earth essence chi, and the next moment, there would be a wave of heaven and earth spiritual chi disorder. It would really be strange if he could really sleep. As for adjusting his emotions, that was even more bullshit. What was even more ridiculous was that in the morning of the next day, when the sky started to turn white, an abnormally dense pressure of heaven and earth descended, causing Guhan, who was in a meditative state, to jump up abruptly. He looked at the sky in horror, his eyeballs almost popping out of their sockets. The pillar of heaven's mountains had already collapsed. Was the sky going to collapse as well? How could there be such an intense pressure? With such intensity, even a saint monarch's lightning tribulation pressure wouldn't be able to compare. Guhan himself was a third-grade saint monarch, and he was fortunate enough to witness Jun Dashao's tribulation yesterday. He could roughly estimate the level of lightning tribulation that a fourth-grade saint monarch would have to go through. However, the pressure in front of him was at least 10 times stronger than that. What was going on? How could there be such a terrifying existence in this world? Suddenly, a strange thought flashed through Guhan's mind. Could it be? Everyone from the 3 holy lands raised their heads and looked at the dark clouds gathering in the sky. Each and every one of them was indescribably alarmed. Tribulation clouds. Countless tribulation clouds. Boundless tribulation clouds. Densely packed, layer upon layer, covering the sky and covering the earth. Clumps, 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 they completely covered the sky that had just begun to turn white. One after another, gigantic eyes slowly formed within the swirling clouds. They coldly stared at the ant-like humans below. What's going on? Guhan leaped up, waving his hands like a madman as he roared. What the F***CK is going on here? It was actually the possibility that he had imagined. It was also the thing that should not have happened. It really came at the wrong time. Boss Gu had completely lost his composure. No wonder Boss Gu had lost his composure like that. This matter was really too ridiculous. The tribulation eyes in the sky were densely packed, and there were almost tens of thousands of them. The dark clouds were dense, layer by layer accumulating and rolling, almost covering the top of their heads. Even with Guhan's over 3,000 years of experience, he had never seen such a phenomenon before. Tribulation. It had always been the matter of a single person. Since ancient times, it was rare for 2 people to undergo tribulation at the same time. As for more people undergoing tribulation at the same time, it had almost never happened before. The reason why it was said to have almost never happened was because a few thousand years ago, the leader of a powerful faction had arranged for many experts to block the tribulation for his son in order to ensure that he could safely undergo the tribulation. But who would have thought that it was originally only a venerable level lightning tribulation? Because someone had interfered with the lightning tribulation, the power of the lightning tribulation became stronger and stronger. It became harder and harder to resist. In the end, that super powerful sect leader even sacrificed himself and the powerful force he had created, but he still couldn't pass through that lightning tribulation. If it was only a single person's tribulation, no matter what realm that person's strength had reached, or even if the 9 nether first young master appeared in the world and underwent the tribulation personally, it might not be as powerful. The situation before them was obviously not the tribulation of 1 or 2 people. It was at least hundreds or thousands of people undergoing tribulation at the same time. The most obvious evidence was in the sky. The countless savage eyes were the best proof. Tribulation lightning, no matter how strong or weak, would only take one look. Guhan's heart was filled with shock. He immediately took a deep breath and wanted to fly up to survey the surroundings, hoping to find a safer place to hide. The lightning tribulation before them was so powerful, the attack range would definitely not be small. If the people of the 3 holy lands were to be implicated, then they would be the real innocent ones. But his body had only risen to a height of 50 zhang when he suddenly grunted and was smashed down to the ground by the pressure of the heavens. The power of tens of thousands of heavenly tribulations had actually suppressed a saint monarch to the point that he could not jump. This time, Guhan was truly shocked. These heavenly tribulations were already so powerful before they even descended. If all of them were to descend, not to mention those who were undergoing the tribulation first, even he, as a bystander, might not be able to survive this tribulation. Looking at the area covered by the heavenly tribulations, even if the pillar of heaven's mountains did not collapse because of the previous accident, but with this scene, the entire pillar of heaven's mountains would definitely be destroyed. The people gathered here could be said to be the last force that the Xian continent could send out to fight against the strange races. If they were to be destroyed, then it would really be the end of the Xian continent. Guhan fell into a state of panic and helplessness. He was so anxious that he was pounding his chest and sighing repeatedly, completely losing his composure. "Old Gu, look over there." Mo Wudao sat on the ground and stretched out his hand, pointing in the direction of the Tian Fa forest encampment. Don't look at how Guhan was pounding his chest and sighing. Apart from this old man from the 3 holy lands, there was no one else who could stand up straight. As for the venerable Mo Wudao, great sect leader Mo, he was in an even worse state right now. He did not have the slightest bit of his usual composure and image. Under this unprecedented fear, everyone fell to the ground on their butts at the same time. If you didn't prostrate on the ground, then you'd be lucky. Guhan turned his head and saw that all the soldiers in the Tian Fa forest encampment were huddled together, sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, their faces solemn, as if waiting for something to happen. Could it be that everything in front of us is caused by them? Guhan was dumbfounded. Then he flew into a rage. Bastard! Nonsense! Who goes through a tribulation like this? This is obviously using their lives as a joke. Everyone huddled together, waiting for the heavenly tribulations to turn them into stuffed buns. Are they really going to repeat the tragedy from thousands of years ago? And from the looks of it, it seems like they've all broken through. But how is this possible? Everyone's cultivation is different. How can they all go through the tribulation at the same time? Could it be that they all broke through in a single night? Cheng Yinzhao's cultivation was not very good among this group of people. Right now, he was lying on the ground with a face full of disbelief. The skies suddenly darkened, as if night had descended once again. All of the tribulation clouds pressed down at the same time. The dense lightning bolts were visible to the naked eye as they scurried back and forth in the dark clouds, emitting a piercing sound. It was as if a blunt knife was slowly sawing at a person's bones. Guhan's hair suddenly stood on end. He was the only one who could still move, and the only one who had a chance to escape. But at this moment, this old man had fallen into a state of mental breakdown. His faith had crumbled, and the thing he had protected his entire life was about to crumble. Just at this moment, a white shadow floated up and turned nimbly in midair. Then, it steadily stopped about 100 feet above the Tion Fa warriors' heads. It did not move and stood there motionlessly. His clothes were whiter than snow, and he stood silently in the air, not moving at all. Right now, there wasn't even a hint of wind in the entire sky. It was so silent that it was like a painting. Apart from large amounts of lightning bolts, there was no other movement. Jun Moxie, how can he still move? He can still fly? Guhan's eyes were wide open, unable to comprehend. At most, he could only maintain a certain amount of movement. Even if Jun Moxie was stronger than him, it shouldn't be by this much, right? Could it be that there was still a chance to turn things around? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Jun Dashao raised his head, his black hair fluttering. But he quietly stretched out his hands, making a hugging gesture, embracing the sky. Wind come. A voice that sounded like an ancient chant suddenly appeared, exceptionally ethereal and agile. Guhan's mouth twitched. This Jun Dashao's acting was really too pretentious. Wind come. Wind, your head. Who do you think you are? You say it will come? Do you really think you're God? And wind come. Is it going to rain in the next moment? But in the next moment, Guhan's eyes widened like a bull's. They almost shot out of his eye sockets. Because after Jun Dashao said those words in the originally frozen sky, it really, suddenly, there was wind. There really was wind. A small gust of wind blew. It blew Jun Moxie's jet black hair and fluttered his fluttering clothes. At this moment, Jun Dashao's image could only be described with one word: floating like an immortal. Absolutely, a classic example of floating like an immortal. Chapter 1174. His brain also short-circuited. It really came with a single summon from him. This wind actually listened to his command. Guhan shook his head, as if trying his best to shake off this unrealistic fantasy. Or maybe it's a coincidence. It's so early in the morning. What's so strange about a bit of wind? It must be a coincidence. But in the next moment, Jun Moxie furrowed his brows, as if unsatisfied. Then he waved his hand with an air of a fraud and said, "The wind is too weak. Stronger, stronger." With a whoosh, the gentle breeze instantly turned into a gale. Instantly, the flag fluttered in the wind. Stronger, stronger, stronger. Finally, as if under Jun Moxie's urging, the sound of the wind grew louder and louder. In the end, it had already become a hurricane that was at least above the 9th level. It let out a sharp and mournful howl, like an ancient giant beast, sweeping across the sky and wreaking havoc. Guhan's mouth was wide open as he looked at Junimo Xie, who was still standing firmly in the strong wind. He let out 2 cries of ah, and directly fell to the ground head first. This was definitely not a coincidence. But how was he supposed to explain everything in front of him? I understand, I must be dreaming right now. Since it's a dream, I'd better continue sleeping. Everything in front of him was really too unreal. But in the next moment, a loud rumble completely woke him up. The lightning tribulation had officially begun to show its might. Guhan finally could not help but struggle up and look over, only to see the first meandering bolt of lightning breaking out from the clouds and smashing down fiercely. Even a grain of rice can release its splendor. Young Master Jun shook his head with a smug and arrogant attitude. He curled his lips in a very disdainful manner and said with disdain. Then he pointed his right hand upwards and shouted softly, "Retract." With a whoosh, the bolt of lightning that had just descended disappeared just like that. It really disappeared at the sound of his voice. Gulp! Those from the 3 holy lands who had personally witnessed this scene all swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then the next thing they did was to rub their eyes in unison. I must be seeing things. Damn it, I've been under too much pressure recently. I'm actually hallucinating. However, the first time might be an illusion, but what about the second time? What about the nth time? The tribulation lightning in the sky also seemed to be completely enraged by Jun Dashao's arrogance. Lightning fell from all directions like a rainstorm. The entire sky was lit up by the crackling of the sun. Jun Dashao kept shouting and waving his arms and legs, jumping around in the air in a self-righteous manner. She even purposely made an orchid gesture and coquettishly said, "Take, F***CK, withdraw, return, collect, 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 collect." Rumble Kacha, the eyes of the people below twitched and their eyeballs almost cramped. Finally, someone couldn't take the mental blow anymore. He foamed at the mouth and fell to the ground with a thud. This was too much of a blow. Other than being a blow, this was too disgusting. Guhan's face darkened as he looked at a certain flashy figure in the sky. He couldn't help but have the urge to faint and vomit. "I know you're capable. I know you're capable. I know you're amazing, but you don't have to show off like this, right? Aren't you tired from jumping around like this? I'm tired from watching you." To be honest, young Master Jun was indeed tired from flying in the air. There was a price to pay for showing off. Although Jun Dashao was very happy to show off like this, but it couldn't be endless. However, the collective heavenly tribulation this time seemed to be endless, of course. There were many benefits to continuing the lightning tribulation. Under such a huge tribulation, before the tribulation completely disappeared, the strange races definitely wouldn't dare to make a move. However, young Master Jun was tired of showing off and couldn't bring himself to show off anymore. Jun Moxie's original intention was to let so many warriors advance at once and show off a miracle. This would undoubtedly raise the morale and confidence of victory. This kind of thinking was good, and it had achieved good results. A great battle was about to arrive, and a freak like Jun Dashao, who could easily resist the heavenly tribulation, appeared on their side. And it was an ultimate heavenly tribulation of thousands of people. He was able to resist it alone, and he even passed it. What kind of godly might was required? What kind of strength? With a leader like this, what battle could they not win? The results were indeed good, and it was better than expected. Right now, not only Tian Fa's warriors, even those experts from the 3 Holy Lands who were originally pessimistic and disappointed, suddenly had a lot of hope in them. But the duration of the tribulation this time was a little too long. It was so long that Jun Dashao was already a little annoyed. Although it was easy, putting on an act once or twice was still showing off, and it was very satisfying. But if it was too much, the act would become a clown's amusement. After this continued for about 2 hours, the pretentious Jun Dashao directly stopped breathing. "I'm not going to put on that Western scene anymore. Damn it, I'll do whatever I want. In any case, this matter isn't up to me. It's just the Hongjun Pagoda automatically collecting the lightning energy. What does it got to do with me? I'm just a decoration. This guy was just putting on an act from the start." In fact, after he gave the warriors the elixirs and confirmed that everyone could break through, there was basically nothing left for him to do. After breaking through, the Hongjun Pagoda was ready the moment the aura of the warriors spread out. After confirming that everyone had broken through, the Hongjun Pagoda automatically set up something that looked like a huge screen above everyone's heads. Apart from young Master Jun, no one else would be able to see or feel this thing. Actually, Jun Moxie couldn't see it either, but he could clearly feel it. It was probably because there were too many people undergoing the tribulation this time, and everyone's grade was rather high. If it was in the past, one would have seen the Hongjun Pagoda make such preparations. Looking at the Hongjun Pagoda crazily absorbing the energy of the lightning, Jun Moxie couldn't understand why this mysterious Hongjun Pagoda needed so much lightning energy. Was it purely for energy? That shouldn't be the case. Heaven and earth spiritual chi was also a form of energy, and he didn't see it absorbing so much. In the past, it was only limited to blocking the lightning for him. Now, it had developed to the point that as long as it was lightning, it would not let go of any of it. This was a really strange phenomenon. Xie was also exhausted. Showing off also took a lot of effort. So, he simply sat down in the air, bored to death. He looked up at the sky helplessly, then looked down at the ground, as if he was bored to death. But in the eyes of the people from the three holy lands, they had the same thought. Looking at this guy, could it be that he had improved after absorbing such a huge amount of lightning energy? Not to mention anything else, just now he had to make a cut, but now he had directly absorbed it. It was much easier than before. After a while, Xiao was still tired from sitting, so he simply lay down. Only by lying down could he sleep. Wasn't it better to have a good rest? After a while, a rhythmic snoring sound gradually rang out. Eyes wide open. He fell asleep. He actually fell asleep again. Under the awe of the thunder that filled the sky, under the tens of thousands of lightning bolts, he actually fell asleep. Just how strong and resilient did his nerves have to be? Actually, it wasn't his nerves. The main thing was that Xiao was really exhausted. First, it was 3 days of raising his strength with all his might, without any time to rest. Then, he had to undergo his own tribulation. Then he had to deal with the noise from the three holy lands. Then, he had to help Tian Fa and Evil Monarch Manor raise their battle strength nonstop. He was really busy to the point that his feet hit the back of his head. When everyone's heavenly tribulation arrived, Xiao still wanted to show off a little. It would be strange if he wasn't tired after jumping around for so long. Under this level of fatigue, anyone would want to sleep and rest. Why would he care about the lightning? The rumbling sounds in the sky continued for 3 days and 3 nights, tormenting the people from the three holy lands until they were close to going crazy. This kind of sound, they couldn't ignore it. This was the sound of the heavenly tribulation, the most dignified and authoritative sound in the world. Most importantly, even if their ears were plugged, the sound would still travel in. But when it came to the 3rd day, everyone was much calmer. It's fine, we'll just get used to it. Anyway, we won't fall behind, so we'll just do what we have to do. As the time of the tribulation slowly passed, the pressure also weakened accordingly. Everyone also gradually got used to it, and they weren't as pathetic as they were at the start. As for Xiao, he had truly rested well in these 3 days and 3 nights. He slept and woke up and slept again. It was so boring that it was killing him. Anyone could move, but this old man definitely couldn't move. Why? What else could it be? He placed himself in the center, the most central position. The Hongjun Pagoda naturally followed him. But the moment he reached this position before the heavenly tribulation ended, he couldn't move at all. He couldn't go anywhere. He could still jump around on the spot, but he definitely couldn't go more than 1 meter away from the heavenly tribulation. The moment he moved away from his current position, the heavenly tribulation wouldn't chase after Xiao. Instead, it would directly land on the heads of those who were undergoing the tribulation. So right now, Jun Moxie couldn't move no matter what. He also couldn't flash into the Hongjun Pagoda. The Hongjun Pagoda was gorging itself. At this moment, he couldn't enter it no matter what. Therefore, he could only wait here. Jun Moxie was a little depressed. This was equivalent to setting up a stage, and he, the famous actor, was prepared to go up and sing a few lines to set off the atmosphere before leaving. But when he started singing, he realized that this stage couldn't be removed. And he, the only main character, couldn't come down. Even if he stopped singing, he still couldn't come down. He just stayed up there for everyone to watch. How could Xiao, who was in such an awkward situation, not feel conflicted? But no matter how conflicted he was, there was nothing he could do. He could only wait. Wait until the heavenly tribulation disappeared automatically. This was also what he deserved. A total of thousands of people undergoing tribulation at the same time. Chapter 1175. Today's 3rd chapter. Make up for the debt. Chapter 20. Debt repaid. From tomorrow onwards, I'll start asking for votes for every single chapter. I've always owed everyone, so I'm too embarrassed to ask for votes for every single chapter. This month, it's been so miserable. I hope that everyone will support me from tomorrow onwards. Thank you. Originally, It was certain that this was unprecedented, but it might not be the last. Jun Dashao still had the ability to create an even bigger scene. But today's awkwardness, even if you beat Jun Dashao to death, he would not do it again. As for the others, even if they had the ability and resources, they might not be willing to be as wasteful as Jun Dashao. So today's grand occasion was unprecedented, and it would be difficult to repeat it again. 3 days later, this unprecedentedly grand, yet farcical heavenly tribulation finally came to an end. Jun Moxie's bones were sore from staying up there for so long. At the moment when the heavenly tribulation announced that it had completely stopped, he entered the Hongjun Pagoda with a whoosh. He didn't show his face, whether it was to take a bath, sleep, or even meet the fifth young lady whom he hadn't seen in a long time. The lightning tribulation was over, but for the next half a day, everyone's ears were still ringing with thunder. For 3 consecutive days and 3 nights, there was thunder. And it wasn't any ordinary thunder. It was a heavenly tribulation, even though everyone was already used to it. Young Master Jun's display of extravagance naturally caused a wide range of discussions. Not only the 3 holy lands, even the Tian Fa warriors, who had always admired this powerful brother-in-law of theirs, were still in disbelief at how they had managed to pass through the heavenly tribulation without any danger. Groups of 3 or 5 people clicked their tongues in wonder. Everything else might be fake, but the increase in strength brought about by this heavenly tribulation was something that could not be faked. Feeling the huge increase in strength in their bodies, everyone felt a sense of satisfaction. At this moment, their battle intent was at an unprecedented high. We're the strange races. As long as they dare to come, we will be able to defeat them. And on the strange races side, after waiting for 3 days, there was finally some movement. After all, such a luxurious heavenly tribulation lineup wasn't something that could be seen on a regular basis. Personally witnessing and experiencing Jun Moxie's extraordinary prowess, Gu Han, the #1 expert of the Holy Lands, could not help but feel ashamed of his inferiority. This was not something a normal human could do. Perhaps only the gods and the legends had such vast magical powers. It was a pity that the Holy Lands and Jun Moxie had been enemies for a long time. Now, there were even more incidents where Xiachong Tian and the rest stood by the side, causing Tian Fa's warriors to be sacrificed. The conflict between the 2 sides had reached an irreconcilable point. Otherwise, with just Jun Moxie's move, how much damage could the Holy Land recover? How many people would not have to worry about the dangers of the Thunder Tribulation? What a blunder. Just as Gu Han let out a heartfelt sigh and felt a sense of loss, the air in the sky suddenly fluctuated. This strange fluctuation was mixed with an extremely dangerous feeling. Gu Han's eyes flashed, and he shouted, "Who is it?" In the air, a hoarse and strange voice laughed lightly. Gu Han is indeed Gu Han. Such extraordinary perception is something that no one else has. Old friend, it's been another 500 years since we last met. How have you been? Gu Han's pupils constricted as he said word by word. So, it's you? Ha, of course it's me. Who else could it be other than me? The air in the sky rippled again. Slowly, the air in the sky began to ripple as well. No one could figure out where exactly this person was hiding. Something as big as the collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains is not something that our divine sun race has been waiting for a day or two. That's an entire 10,000 years of waiting. Now that the Pillar of Heaven's mountains has collapsed, it also officially announces the beginning of the decline of the Xian continent's 3 holy lands. Brother Gu Han, we've known each other for a long time. I really cannot bear to see a legend of a generation fall like this. Your Xian continent has a very good saying. A wise man submits to circumstances. Can't you see the trend now? That strange voice was still faintly discernible. Bullsh *T. What do you mean by the general trend? Gu Han said angrily. If you strange races dare to come in, none of you will be able to leave alive. This is the real trend of the times. AI. That voice seemed to sigh dejectedly. Brother Gu Han, you're still the same as when we first met 3,000 years ago. But it's a pity that your luck is no longer as good as before. He let out a deep sigh and said, Guhan, do you still remember before the pillar of heaven's mountains was opened, there was a stone tablet there? Others might not know what was recorded on it. Or perhaps they don't remember, but you should know, right? Stone tablet? Guhan's face turned pale. Stone tablet, the time that the faint voice mentioned, didn't even have a person like Guhan. It was truly a long time ago, and not many people knew about it. Even if they knew, they might not remember it. However, in the most ancient and secretive records of the Heaven's Saint Palace, there were records of it. On the old site of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, there was once a stone tablet. That stone tablet was personally erected by the number 1 person in Xian, the 9 Nether First Young Master. Recorded on it was a prophecy of the 9 Nether First Young Master. But ever since the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains suddenly collapsed 8,000 years ago, that stone tablet also mysteriously disappeared. The invisible person in the air sighed lightly. You humans really forget your roots, ah? Such an important matter, but no one remembers it. Even the first seat of the Heaven Saint Palace forgot about it. How lamentable. Nonsense. How could this old man forget? Of course I remember, but I have no obligation to tell you. Guhan was enraged. Recalling the records on the stone tablet, he couldn't help but sigh helplessly in his heart. Could it be that all of this was really the will of the heavens? Everything was already predetermined. The air trembled, and the demonic voice recited slowly. 9 illusions as emptiness, quicksand as wind, pillar of heavens collapses, 2 sides contend for supremacy, death of the 3 saints, ethereal shadow, a sudden dream, neither illusion nor emptiness, 1,000 years of hegemony, 10,000 years of evil technique. When this voice recited the words on the stone tablet, it was calm and composed, and even carried a hint of respect. Guhan's face was ashen. That's right. This was the most secretive content of the Heaven Saint Palace. He never would have thought that this strange race person would actually know. Guhan, you don't have to be too shocked. Although I've known about this content for a long time, I've only completely understood the meaning of it now. The person in the air continued to speak with a demonic voice. Of course, regarding the 9 illusory quicksand, I've already known about it since 3,000 years ago. What? Guhan's eyes widened. You knew? How did you know? That's not important. That's not important. What's really important is the meaning of the content recorded on the stone tablet. Do you understand? The voice laughed lightly. Guhan, I believe that with your intelligence, you won't be unable to understand, right? Guhan sweated profusely, and his voice suddenly became a little hoarse. Sasho Kitajima, you don't have to be so smug. Things might not be as you think. Anything is possible. Everything has not come to an end yet. And the person who had spoken in the air was the current leader of the strange races and also the number 1 expert of the strange races. Sasho Kitajima. This person could be considered as an old acquaintance of Guhan. The war for seizing the heavens for 3,000 years had always been under the control of Guhan and Sasho Kitajima. That voice chuckled. This time, it was 2 voices laughing mockingly at the same time. One was still eerie and demonic, while the other was like a tinkling bell. 9 illusory emptiness, quicksand becomes wind. The content of these 2 lines is very simple. The 9 illusory quicksand that had supported the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains for billions of years disappeared due to some unforeseen event. Thus, the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains collapsed. The strange race's Sasho Kitajima laughed happily as he explained patiently. The Pillar of Heaven's Mountains collapsed, and the 2 sides contended for supremacy. You don't need me to explain anything else, right? As for the death of the 3 saints, illusory emptiness at the end, it probably means that your 3 holy lands are about to be destroyed. The strange race's Chuangshang Beidao laughed gloatingly. As for it being a dream, it's neither an illusion nor an illusion. From my understanding of this sentence, it means that the continent that your 3 holy lands have been guarding for a whole 10,000 years is just a long dream. Since it's a dream, you'll wake up sooner or later. Nonsense! Guhan roared angrily, and his body flashed like a bolt of lightning as he shot into the air. A few bangs rang out, as if someone had exchanged a few blows with Guhan in the air. Following that, a series of violent ripples appeared in the air. Guhan floated down to the ground, his eagle-like eyes still staring warily at the sky. Not bad. Looks like you've already grasped my location. However, this is still not enough. The voice in the air changed, as if it came from all directions. Guhan smiled dejectedly. That's right, it's indeed not enough. Once the other party changed their concealment method, Guhan would not be able to find them. Guhan's cultivation was undoubtedly the strongest in the 3 Holy Lands, but he did not have the all-seeing eye like Qiao Ying and could not see through the unique concealment method of the strange races. Next, there's the last sentence. In the air, Sasho Kitajima laughed even more happily. Guhan, I have to say, teasing you like this once every 500 years is indeed very satisfying. I really like this feeling, and I never get tired of it. Guhan snorted coldly. But a pity, every time we fight, you're always the one who escapes the fastest. If you can be as upright as a human, perhaps this old man will look up to you. A pity that you're not qualified to make me do that. Sasho Kitajima cackled. Next, the last sentence, 1,000 years of hegemony, 10,000 years of evil skill. Haha, it's obviously saying that our divine sun rays can also occupy the continent for 10,000 years. He laughed proudly. You humans have always called our divine sun race an evil existence, and our cultivation techniques are naturally evil as well. Haha, this 10,000 years of evil skill is definitely the cultivation technique of our divine sun race. In this regard, we will not shirk our responsibility, and we will not make a mistake. Could it be that you self-proclaimed righteous people are willing to say that your cultivation techniques are very evil? Before this book ends, Phonling has a few wishes that I hope everyone can help me with. 1. This book currently has 2 million views. I hope it can reach 30 million views before the book ends. 2. This book currently has 386 million recommendation votes. I hope it can reach 5 million before the book ends. 3. This book currently has over 90,000 comments, and the number of replies is about the same. I hope it can reach 100,000 before the book ends. These 3 wishes do not require any money. I hope that my brothers and sisters, no matter where they're reading, can come to Chidian and give me a few free recommendation votes and make a few posts. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1176. His explanation was completely indisputable. Even Guhan had the same guess in his heart. But how could he admit it? This prophecy came from your ancestor, the Nine-Nether First Young Master. This time, Chuangshang Beidao used a bell-like female voice that carried a thick sense of disdain and mockery. I am filled with respect for this old ancestor of yours, and it has always been so. In truth, the entire Divine Sun is filled with the utmost respect for this great existence. We have always only acknowledged the strong, the truly strong. On the other hand, you humans of the continent, the so-called noble humans, how many of you truly respect the Nine-Nether First Young Master? Guhan's body shook, and he couldn't help but take a step back, his face pale. You guys practice the skills passed down by him, and use his mental cultivation to become stronger. But you still refuse to acknowledge the position of his ancestor. At least, you refuse to respect the Nine-Nether First Young Master as your ancestor. What is the reason for this? I have never been able to understand this point. The female voice of Sasho Kitajima said faintly, Your continent has a saying, deceiving one's master and destroying one's ancestors. I don't know if your actions can be considered as deceiving one's master and destroying one's ancestors. Or perhaps I have misunderstood the meaning of this saying. Guhan was stunned when he heard that, and then he was stupefied. After a while, his entire body was drenched in sweat. Indeed, the Nine-Nether First Young Master had conquered the entire Xian continent, and the entire continent had implemented the Nine-Nether First Young Master's techniques. But in the current Xian continent, how many people truly respected the Nine-Nether First Young Master as their ancestor? Deceiving one's master and destroying one's ancestors might be a little too much, but it was more or less the same. In the current continent, There was not a single ancestral temple dedicated to the Nine Nether First Young Master. It was rather funny. The Nine Nether First Young Master, a legend who had left behind so many things for this continent, did not even have an ancestral temple dedicated to him. The reason was simple. Although the Nine Nether First Young Master was powerful and unparalleled, but he was ultimately someone from another world. He would forever be someone who was separated from the Xian continent. And there was another point. He was a conqueror, and this continent was the target of his conquest, because of this contradiction that could never be reconciled. So, as long as the Nine Nether First Young Master existed, the continent would still be under his rule. But once he was gone, everything would be over. No one will constantly remind future generations that in this world, there was once a person who conquered the entire continent. Apart from the fact that he had to be mentioned due to the inheritance of Xian skills, there weren't many people in the entire Xian continent who knew of the Nine Nether First Young Master. Isn't that so? The female voice, Sasho Kijima, said mockingly, "Over there, no matter who you are, as long as you are strong, you will be respected, the most thorough respect. As for you, you cultivated the Nine Nether First Young Master's cultivation technique and used it to hunt down the Nine Nether First Young Master's descendant. Even we would not do such a thing. But you did it, and you even did it with a clear conscience. I don't know, or perhaps I don't understand. Is this your so-called way of repaying a debt of gratitude?" Guhan's face was livid as he said, "Nonsense, what do you know?" But in his heart, he was thinking, the strange races have never personally come to the continent, so how do they know about these things? Even if there are spies, they would definitely not be able to pass the information. We only know that the people of the continent are ungrateful, deceiving their masters and killing their ancestors. That is enough. Sasho Kitajima chuckled. "We are here to exterminate you, on behalf of the heavens." Bullsh asterisk T. Guhan finally exploded. "Sasho Kitajima, if you have the guts, show yourself and fight to the death with this old man." "Fight to the death? No, now is not the time." Sasho Kitajima changed his voice again, switching to that eerie male voice. "Today, I only came to take a look purely out of curiosity. I have no other intentions." He suddenly paused and looked at all the Tian Fa and Holy Land troops within 1,000 miles. A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes before he asked, "Guhan, what was that terrifying pressure that suddenly appeared in the past 3 days?" In the past 3 days, not only were the experts on this side unable to move, even the experts of the strange races were unable to get close. Even Sasho Kitajima himself could only come here after the pressure had completely passed. This matter caused the entire strange races to panic. "So this is why you're here." Guhan suddenly burst into laughter, finally understanding the purpose of his visit, and said, "Don't you think it's very scary? Difficult to resist? Are you afraid?" To think that he actually managed to turn the tables on this topic. That's right, this level of heavenly pressure is indeed very terrifying. I believe this is something that no one can deny. That's why I'm here to ask this time. Why did such a thing happen? Sasho Kitajima did not deny it. He was indeed a little afraid in his heart. This time, he had indeed come purely for this matter. If that aura just now was caused by a single person undergoing a tribulation, then facing such a person, the entire Divine Sun race could do nothing but be slaughtered. They might as well just stay in the race and wait for the next opportunity. After tens of thousands of years, the strange races were already used to waiting. "You really want to know?" Guan laughed heartily. "Nonsense. If I don't want to know, why would I come all the way here to find you? Do you really think that I miss you so much?" Sasho Kitajima was a little exasperated as he said impatiently, "Since you want to know so much, I'm not going to tell you." Guhan suddenly laughed heartily. "Idiot." Sasho Kitajima was completely enraged. He was the one who teased Guhan just now. Now that the tables had turned, he was the one being teased instead. How could he not be angry? The female voice cursed and was about to attack. But for some reason, she did not attack. The air in the air rippled violently. Then, Sasho Kitajima's voice suddenly became heavy. "Is someone undergoing a tribulation?" Guhan snorted and did not comment. Can't you tell if it's a tribulation or not? The air flew and the air froze, as if Sasho Kitajima had quietened down. Then, the airflow suddenly became even more turbulent, and the air seemed to become lively again. Guhan, we'll meet again. Let's rely on our own abilities on the battlefield. Sasho Kitajima Lengling said. Then with a whoosh, a whirlwind swept up high into the air, leaving a vacuum in the air. Then it turned into a violent hurricane, like a raging dragon in the air. In an instant, a shadow of over 100 zhang was formed. His aura was so powerful and domineering that it was unbelievable. But when he passed by Tian Fa's troops, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. What a majestic Tian Fa warrior. I believe that the losses a few days ago were caused by them. Apart from them, I really don't know of any other battle force that could achieve such a glorious result of a complete victory despite the huge difference in numbers of 1 to 30. Then, he looked at Mei Xuan, who was staring at the sky cautiously. What a beautiful girl! Mei Xuan snorted, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, she waved her hand, and the blood of yellow flame shot out, its sword light shooting into the sky. A surprise cry rang out in the air, followed by a few clanging sounds of weapons clashing. The blood of yellow flame let out an angry sword hum, and a bright light burst forth, instantly forming a light screen in the air. The light screen rumbled, and a mountain of swords appeared in the air. The sword chi was cold, and the countless people below felt their bodies turn cold. Good sword. The male and female voices of Sasho Kitajima praised at the same time, revealing a strong sense of wariness and fondness. Suddenly, 2 long whistles rang out. One was forceful and sinister, while the other was sharp and melodious. A figure appeared in the sky, then disappeared in a flash. A tornado suddenly swept up into the sky, then twisted in the air and disappeared without a trace. Only a sentence was left in the air. Guhan. 3 days later, watch as I break through you in an upright and dignified manner. Personally defeat you. Let your Xin people be convinced. Break through you head-on. Personally defeat you. This #1 expert of the strange races truly had a heroic spirit that soared to the heavens. The sword chi of the blood of yellow flame roared, and the tip of the sword trembled. 100 zhang long sword chi formed, and it was about to give chase. Come back, Mei Xuan hurriedly ordered, and waved her hand. The blood of yellow flame roared unwillingly in the air, and only after a long time did it descend unwillingly. It lay quietly in Mei Xuan's jade-like hands, the sword still glinting with a cold light, as if it was extremely unwilling and unwilling. Such a delicious and powerful tonic had slipped away from under its eyes, just like that. The blood of yellow flame was extremely disappointed. Why couldn't he let me have a good meal? If I could absorb this 2-headed monster, then how much would I improve? The blood of yellow flame fantasized endlessly, and the edge of the sword clanged. Mei Xuan thought that it was because his battle intent had not dissipated, and that was why it was like this. But who would have thought that it was actually the blood of yellow flame drooling greedily? Just like how human beings would drool after seeing delicious food, their appetites would be greatly stimulated seeing this powerful enemy leave. Guhan could not help but let out a deep sigh. The other party's words were still ringing in his ears. Could it be that this time the Xian continent was really doomed? Break through you head-on. Defeat you with my own hands. Guhan muttered to himself, thinking to himself, is this a challenge? Or was it a trap? But no matter which one it was, this battle was going to be extremely dangerous. Thinking back to Sasho Kitajima's words before he left, Guhan could not help but say in his heart, good sword. Looking at Mei Xuan, a strange light flashed in Guhan's eyes. Right now, he had finally discovered some clues. Could it be that this sword attacked on its own and was not controlled by someone? If that was not the case, with just Mei Xuan, how would she be able to stop Sasho Kitajima? Not to mention that she was able to fight evenly with Sasho Kitajima from a distance. Chapter 1177. At this moment, Guhan started to miss Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao. Right now, Jun Moxie had disappeared at such a crucial time, missing the summit meeting between the two races. Naturally, he didn't have the chance to know about this prophecy from 10,000 years ago, as well as the strange race's explanation. Speaking of which, this was actually within reason. After a few days, the eldest young master was truly exhausted. That was a lightning tribulation, and it was a large-scale lightning tribulation that lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, Even if they had strange techniques that could perfectly deal with a lightning tribulation, they still needed to be on full alert, not daring to make any sudden movements. If they made any careless mistakes, like missing 1 or 2 lightning tribulations, it might result in a large number of casualties. After spending so much effort for 3 whole days, now that they were free, they should hurry and find a place to rest. But just now, if Jun Moxie had been present when Sasho Kitajima came, what would he have done? With that brat's sharp tongue and vengeful personality, he would definitely not let this strange racist person get away with it, right? At the very least, he wouldn't let him leave so easily. Guhan believed that with Jun Moxie's shocking strength and venomous tongue, even if he couldn't beat this strange racist person until he vomited blood and fled, he would at least be able to make him vomit blood and run away in anger. In any case, he would be able to make him vomit blood no matter what. Thinking of this, Guhan couldn't help but smile slightly. His mood that had sunk to the bottom of the valley earlier also recovered slightly. Jun Moxie had always been an existence that could bring about miracles. Right now, at least right now, we are on the same side. I sincerely hope that he can bring about another miracle and get us out of this nightmare that we can't escape from. The moment Sasho Kitajima left, Mei Shuin, who had also sensed it, knew that the strange race's next move was very likely to arrive soon. So, she tightened her guard even more. After Jun Moxie spared no expense to help his side greatly increase their manpower, the strength of the Tian Fa Forest and Evil Monarch Manor had completely reached a high level. His standard was ridiculously high. Due to the limitations of one's aptitude and cultivation level, there were less than 20 people who had barely reached the Holy Venerate level. As for the strength of a Saint Monarch, only Mei Shuiyin had reached it. But she had broken through to the 2nd level in one go, and was not too far off in the 3rd level Saint Monarch Guhan. And the most precious thing was that in these 10,000 years, none of the Xian beasts of Tian Fa had reached the level of Saint Monarch. But Mei Shuiyin was truly the only one in the history of the Xian beasts. These were the top combat powers. Although it was shocking, it was not shocking enough. What was truly unbelievable was the number of people with high combat power. All the Tian Fa ferocious beasts and the people from the Evil Monarch Manor had all risen to the Holy Emperor realm. There was no almost, it was all. There were no exceptions, it was all. Even the 2 Tian Can DK and Tian Can Xian cultivators who had the lowest Xian cultivation had also climbed to the Holy Emperor realm. Not only had they climbed to the Holy Emperor realm, they had also relied on their indomitable willpower and reborn talent to reach the 3rd level of the Holy Emperor realm in one go. This kind of crossing speed could be said to be unparalleled since ancient times. Of course, the 2 of them had paid a huge price for such a shocking improvement. After all, they were not like Jun Moxie, who had countless backup plans. During the process of their improvement, Mei Shuiyin had always been sitting by their side, using her art of unlocking Heaven's Fortune's unique spiritual chi to continuously expand their meridians and repair their damaged bodies. Even so, the 2 of them were still hovering on the edge of life and death several times, facing the outcome of their bodies exploding if they couldn't hold on any longer. In this way, although their improvement was extremely terrifying, it also left behind a considerable side effect. That was, their meridians were completely saturated and solidified after this improvement. Before their realm and comprehension reached the same level as their cultivation, there was no chance for them to improve anymore. This was a long process that required a considerable amount of luck. However, This was the true strength of a third-level Saint Emperor. It could be said that it was a realm that the two of them, or perhaps more than 99% of the people in this world, could only dream of reaching. It was like reaching the heavens in a single step. What was truly commendable was that even after obtaining such a shocking increase in strength, the two of them still remained expressionless. Other than the occasional flash of excitement in their eyes, there was no other change in their expressions. Furthermore, they still spent most of their free time practicing martial arts and training their own realms. They strived to synchronize their reactions with their current strength as soon as possible. This kind of transcendent state of mind was something that even Xian beasts that had lived for hundreds of years could not compare to. Just like what Jun Mo Xie had seen with a single glance back then, indifferent to favor or humiliation, his expression would not change even if a mountain collapsed in front of him. And the direct descendants of the evil monarch manor were undoubtedly the most suitable choice on this point. Therefore, after Mei Shui Yin Shui had agreed to Solitary Falcon's request, the Tiger King, Earthcracker, who had been standing beside her, had requested to lead 3,000 elite members of his Tiger clan as the second echelon. Mei Shuiyin agreed to Tiger King's request. Her face was as calm as still water, but her heart was in turmoil. With her intelligence, how could she not understand that Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun had chosen the most likely position to be sacrificed for Tian Fa for the sake of the unity of all their forces? And Tiger King's request this time was similarly simple. Even if he and these 3,000 Tiger Tribe brothers all self-destructed and died, he still wanted to ensure that Solitary Eagle and the rest of the evil Monarch Manor's brothers returned safely as much as possible. You can disregard your life and death for me. I can disregard everything for you. Although you're from the evil Monarch Manor, and I'm from Tian Fa, I'm a Xian beast, and you're a human. But at this moment, we're just brothers who will go through life and death together. My back can be trusted to the other party. And the other beast kings of Tian Fa also made use of all the time they had, instructing their subordinates to train as much as they could, allowing their reaction speed to match the sudden increase in their cultivation. Crane King would order a batch of flying Xian beasts under him to take off and land after every incense stick's worth of time, keeping a close watch on that long line of defense. There were also large numbers of flying Xian beasts in a state where they could take off at any moment. On its back, there were even Tian Fa warriors with the backs of tigers and waists of bears already seated. With just a command, they would be able to take off and rush to their destination in less than a blink of an eye. Under Gu Han's lead, the people from the three holy lands maintained their composure and rested their spirits. The moment something happened, Gu Han's request was, "We must not let Tian Fa look down on the people of the holy lands. Even if everyone dies this time, we must defend the dignity of the holy lands. Or perhaps this is the last time we defend the dignity of the holy lands." It was that last sentence that completely ignited the determination of the experts of the Holy Lands to fight to the death. The entire place was heavy. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly heavy, and swords were drawn. Everyone was preparing for battle with all their might, especially when Bear Mountain had once said tearfully, before Little Eagle died in battle, he had seriously mentioned to me the weakness of the strange race's concealment techniques. It seemed to be disadvantageous to a chaotic battle. Once they are in a state of concealment, the strange race's defense will be at its lowest. Chapter 1178. Mei Shuiyin was currently frowning as she paced back and forth, thinking about how to make good use of this weakness. One thing was for sure, if this weakness could be used well, it would definitely be able to deal a heavy blow to the strange race's experts who could conceal themselves. It could even be a devastating blow. If the tactics were successful and the results were ideal, it would be enough to make them not dare to use stealth tactics in future battles. And as long as they did not use those damn stealth techniques, what would the soldiers of the Xian Empire have to fear? In previous battles, the most troublesome ones were those perverted fellows who would mysteriously disappear at the drop of a hat. And the reason why the Xian Empire suffered the most casualties was because of those fellows who would disappear at the drop of a hat. But she frowned and thought for a long time. Although she had this weakness that could be used, she still could not think of a practical way to take action. Just as Mei Shuyan was deep in thought, Jun Dashao suddenly appeared. The current Jun Moxie seemed to have something on him. As for what it was exactly, Mei Shuyan couldn't explain it no matter how hard she tried. She could only vaguely feel that Jun Mo Xie seemed to be different from before. Very different. In fact, Jun Moxie also had this strange feeling. After absorbing the lightning tribulation, Jun Moxie immediately returned to the Hongjun Pagoda to regulate his breathing. At the same time, he shouted a few times to vent his frustration and awkwardness. To his surprise, he found that the Hongjun Pagoda seemed to be different from before. It was as if a certain part of it was rippling, but it had not reached a certain critical point. Jun Mo Xie was also flabbergasted by this strange change, and he was filled with questions. At the same time, Jun Dashao also felt that his cultivation level had loosened. It seemed like it was a sign of a breakthrough. The reason was not difficult to imagine. These changes must have occurred because the Hongjun Pagoda had absorbed so much of the lightning energy, and this had led to these changes. Although the feeling was strange, it was developing in a good direction. Could it be that absorbing a large amount of lightning energy could actually help him speed up his breakthrough and increase his strength? Jun Mo Xie was also a little unsure about this point. In fact, he couldn't figure it out. It was for this reason that he had spent a lot of time in the Hongjun Pagoda to study this matter. However, he didn't expect that in such a short period of time, not only did he not figure out what was going on, but he also became more and more confused. Moreover, he even missed the #1 expert of the strange races. He had missed the summit dialogue between the three major powers. Jun Dashao stomped his feet and pounded his chest. He was truly regretful. If he was here just now, he wouldn't have let that guy leave just like that. No matter what, he would have at least given him a real beating. Jun Dashao heaved a long sigh, deeply regretting that he had missed such a heaven-sent opportunity. The other party had already made it clear that he was going to be messed with, and he had actually missed such an opportunity. Of course, if he really wanted to beat him, Jun Dashao would only use the blood of Yellow Flame to beat him. He definitely wouldn't use that a heartfelt sigh and an inexplicable sense of loss caused Mei Shuyan's brows to furrow. She almost wanted to give this fellow a death sentence on the spot. This was the godly technique that all women learned on their own. It could be said to be the most painful for men. Only now did Jun Dashao realize that Mei Shuyan seemed to have a lot on her mind. He hurriedly asked about it. Mei Shuyan furrowed her brows as she recounted the matter. Jun Moxie's face instantly turned solemn. If he could make good use of it, it would undoubtedly be a powerful weapon. Although Eagle King had successfully discovered this weakness, he was lacking in manpower at that time. Secondly, he was lacking in adaptability. Thirdly, the situation at that time was a little too chaotic. It was impossible for him to use any effective methods. As for Bear King, if he could think of a way, he wouldn't be Bear King. This is the plan that Little Eagle left for us before he died. This is a great weapon against the strange races. We must not neglect it. This plan might even be a way to turn the tables against the strange races. Mei Shuyan bit her lips and said resolutely. Her own brother had sacrificed his life in exchange for this information. In Mei Shuyan's heart, it was naturally extremely important. I know. I understand the importance of this information. Jun Moxie muttered to himself as he paced back and forth, his brows furrowed in deep thought. His mind flashed through all the battle examples he had seen in his previous life. He secretly compared them one by one. He then recalled the experience he had gained from fighting with the ninjas in his previous life. It seemed that there was already a path in front of him. However, when he looked at it, it was blurry and he couldn't see it clearly. He couldn't tell the exact reason. Under what circumstances would the strange races send out a large number of experts to participate in the battle? Jun Moxie muttered to himself as he asked this question. A situation that would cause the strange races to send out a large number of enduring ghosts enduring Earth's and enduring Heaven's experts. Unless the battle had reached a critical juncture where life and death would be decided. Only then would they send out all their experts to break through with all their might in order to win the battle. Perhaps only then would the strange races really send out a large number of experts that could turn the tides of the battle. Mei Shuiyin frowned as she said, "But if that really happens, I'm afraid that our battle strength would be reduced by 70 to 80%. Even though everyone's strength has increased, in terms of numbers, we are still at an absolute disadvantage. The enemy's number of people could be 30 times, 50 times, or even 100 times more than ours. If the enemy uses a human wave attack, we will definitely be in a state of exhaustion. Even if we manage to hold on, how are we going to deal with the later battles? There is always a limit to human strength." Jun Moxie's brows furrowed even tighter. That's right. This is indeed a difficult point to grasp. If we don't grasp it well, we might end up making a fool of ourselves and allow the strange races to charge in. That would be a real disaster. Mei Shuiyin frowned deeply. She knew that the strange races had a fatal weakness that they could exploit, but she couldn't think of a way to deal with it. This kind of feeling was really driving her crazy. I believe that at the beginning of the battle, the enemy might not send out many experts. Even if there are enduring Earths and enduring Heavens, there won't be too many of them. Jun Moxie said calmly, "So, at the beginning of the battle, as long as everyone is careful, I believe that under the invisible attacks of the strange races, there won't be too many losses. So, in normal battles, we can't use this point." Yes. Mei Shuiyin's eyes revealed a heartfelt pain. No matter which battle it is, there will always be casualties. As for the final battle, Jun Moxie's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Suddenly, he clapped his hands and said, "I got it. We can do this. How can we do this?" Mei Shuiyin's spirits rose. She didn't blame Jun Moxie for speaking incoherently. "This way, we can gather all the Saint Venerables on our side, and at the right time, we can enter the front line of the battlefield. Then, we can lock onto the enemy's experts. We don't need to lock onto them completely. Everyone only needs to remember a few faces. As long as they notice that those people have suddenly disappeared, it means that the strange races have sent out their experts, and many of them have used their invisible techniques to kill their way over. This shouldn't be wrong, right?" Jun Moxie smiled. "Indeed, as long as many of the enemy's experts disappear at the same time, they will naturally be charging over. Is there even a need to say it?" Mei Shuiyin was a little confused. "What's the hurry? Listen to what I have to say. Our team will now be divided into 4 groups. The first group will focus on defending ourselves and withstanding the enemy's attacks. Then, the second group will begin to attack the area in front of the first group and within a radius of 30 feet above them. The third group will then attack the area in a radius of 60 feet above the first and second groups. They will then attack the area in a radius of 60 feet above the first and second groups. Finally, the fourth group will attack an area of 10 zhong, using a dense and indiscriminate attack." As Jun Moxie spoke, he took out a stone and drew out the attack that he had just explained on the ground. "That's it. After the last 3 waves of attack, all of us will immediately charge into the strange race's main army. We'll make use of the strategy of mixing the enemy and our allies, so that those invisible bastards won't be able to do anything. I estimate that after these 3 waves of attack, at least half of the strange race's experts will be killed." Jun Moxie threw the stone aside and said, "This is the best solution, and also the stupidest solution. But if we cooperate well, it is also the most effective strategy." Mei Shuiyin squatted down and carefully looked at the attack that Jun Moxie had drawn out. She thought for a while and said, "That's right. As of now, this is the only effective method we can think of to kill a large number of the strange race's experts. Remember, the key to this plan is the reversal pill." Jun Moxie's eyes flashed. "All of the soldiers, if they're injured, do not take it. We must hold on until the enemy sees that we are at the end of the road and sends out a large number of experts. Then, we will all take the reversal pill. Only then can we follow my plan and deal the most severe blow to the enemy. Yes. Mei Shuiyin frowned and said, but if we do that, there will be sacrifices. Jun Moxie said solemnly, or this is the price we will have to pay. Mei Shuiyin let out a long sigh. She felt as if her heart was blocked by something, and it was very uncomfortable. That's the only way. Jun Moxie raised his head and thought over the plan once more. He sighed deeply and said resolutely, now is not the time to be soft-hearted. I also want my brothers to return safe and sound. But this is obviously impossible. There's one more thing we can use. Mei Shuiyin's eyes flashed as she said. Chapter 1179. This is the all-seeing Rakshasa, Qiaoying. Mei Shuiyin pointed at the diagram drawn by Jun Moxie and said, our attack is only a rough plan, and we can only rely on our own estimation. Although the plan is good, the battlefield is constantly changing, and we may not be able to execute this strategy smoothly. But if Qiaoying is here, the situation will be very different, because she is the one who can clearly see the enemy's movements. If she is in command at the right time, the success rate of executing the strategy will be greatly increased. That's right. Jun Moxie slapped his thigh and said, how could I forget about the all-seeing Rakshasa? Isn't she the only one who can see through the strange race's abnormal technique? At that time, even Jun Moxie couldn't help but think of himself that day. Wasn't the yin-yang escape, which had never failed, also recorded by this expert's all-seeing eye? Then, he thought of Qiaoying's graceful figure, her exquisite features, and her mature and charming expression. Suddenly, young Master Jun's heart skipped a beat, and a thought popped up in his mind. If I can touch her, I wonder how happy that would be. Mei Shuiyin was originally happy that she had solved a problem that had been bothering her for a few days, but when she looked up, she found that Jun Dashao seemed to have fallen into a lecherous state. She had just finished talking about Qiaoying, and this guy actually looked like he wasn't satisfied. This was too obvious. What else was there to say? Mei Shuiyin was instantly filled with jealousy, and she used the two-finger Zen technique again. 2 fingers fiercely pinched his waist and immediately exerted force, turning him 180 degrees clockwise, and then continued to move 360 degrees. She gritted her teeth and asked word by word, what are you thinking about? I was thinking, Aya. Jun Moxie cried out in pain. This girl actually used the tyrannical strength of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to pinch him. They were of the same origin, so the amount of damage they could inflict was considerable. In addition, the effect of man hurts the most had caused Jun Mo-xie to feel a piercing pain in his heart. His mouth was like a snowy snow, and he was almost unable to speak. In the end, Mei Shuiyin couldn't bear it anymore. She relaxed a little and said, I just mentioned Qiaoying and you're acting like a lecher. You already have so many sisters at home. Why are you still letting your imagination run wild? Did he have some other ideas? Are you planning to take in another room? Shuiyin, no matter what happens, you have to be reasonable, right? When Jun Dashao saw that the situation was not good, he quickly came up with a countermeasure. His mind flashed like lightning, and he came up with the perfect countermeasure. Aya, you think you're reasonable? Don't you know what Jun Dashao's principles are? I'm here to listen to your teachings. Beauty May's words were polite, but her originally loosened fingers exerted force again and continued to create men hurt the most. Of course you have to listen to my teachings. Aren't you the one who started it? You definitely don't want me to think, but that's still okay. Young Master Jun gritted his teeth and said, I'm a man who can't be any more normal. How can I not think about such important matters of human relations? If I don't think about it, then it'll be a big matter, right? If I'm like you, reverting to your original form at the crucial moment, refusing to cooperate with you and running away, I won't even be able to find a place to cry. If it happens a few more times, I'm afraid I'll become a eunuch. I won't even need to be a man anymore. I'll directly enter the palace to serve the emperor. And you're still angry with me. Mei Shuiyin felt a little guilty, and her eyes were evasive as she said, I didn't want to. That time I wasn't prepared. That was too powerful. How could I endure it? Then, when will you be ready? Are you ready now? Don't worry, I'll be very gentle, really very gentle. June Moxie asked excitedly. He had long forgotten about what men hurt the most. June Dashao purposely brought up this topic at this moment, not only to resolve the awkward situation, but also to force Beauty May to express her opinion. He couldn't possibly continue like this, could he? Every time there was a critical moment, she would transform. It didn't need to be too much. If it happened one or two more times, June Dashao felt that he would definitely be impotent by this girl. People say that a bachelor's life depends on steel spears. A raw cowhide can also be pierced through 3 sheets. It seemed that he was almost the same at that time. He even pierced through the bedding. Other people were bachelors for a lifetime, but he had lived 2 lifetimes. How do you prepare for that kind of thing? How can you be so gentle? Mei Shuiyan's face turned red. She was a little bashful. Uffed. So you mean, I'm not ready? June Moxie almost vomited blood. Give me some time. Slowly. Mei Shuiyan covered her face, and her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. June First Dashao banged his head on the ground, stamped his feet, and pounded his chest. He suddenly wanted to bang his head against the wall. My dear, please have pity on me. If I hold it in any longer, I'll be able to form a sarira. What? Sarira? What's a sarira? Mei Shuiyan scoffed and asked curiously. A sarira is, if a man can't release that life essence for a long time, then it will form a big rock there. In the future, he won't be able to release it anymore. June Moxie made up a story and rolled his eyes. Speaking of which, this sarira was really hard to explain in this world. Because in this world, there were no monks. Form into a rock? Is it really that scary? Mei Shuiyan was shocked, and her big round eyes widened. Yes. How could it not be? The matter that I just mentioned is like an arrow on a bowstring. It's imminent, and it's hanging by a thread. June Mo, Xie said mournfully. Don't you still have Miao Xiao Miao, Guanqing Han, and the others? Recently, you also have Xiaoi. No matter what, it's enough for you to torment. You won't form that. Sarira, do you really think I'm stupid? Mei Shuiyan pouted and turned around. How can they be compared to you? June Moxie was anxious and started to ramble incoherently. The one I want to do the most is you Pei. What are you saying? Mei Shuiyan was really embarrassed this time. She stomped her feet with a red face and ran away, covering her face. She only left a sentence behind. Why aren't you going to the Holy Lands to ask Xiaoing to come over? June Dashao let out a long sigh, as if he had lost his soul. Seeing June Moxie walking towards him with a gloomy face, Guhan hurriedly stood up to welcome him. Guhan could see the current situation very clearly. If they wanted to stop the strange races from invading the Xian continent, the only possibility was June Moxie. As for the 3 Holy Lands, there was no hope for them anymore. Looking at the scattered 6,000 to 7,000 people on his side, this was the final result of the 3 Holy Lands sending out all their forces. Although those who could come here were all experts, but compared to June Moxie's evil Monarch Manor or Tian Fa, they were definitely not on the same level. Manor Lord June. Guhan smiled and stepped forward to welcome June Moxie. June Moxie did not beat around the bush and said directly, Senior Gu, this sect is here to borrow someone from you. Guhan's heart skipped a beat, but he was not too surprised. Xiaoing, that's right. It's Xiaoing, June Moxie said. No problem. Guhan didn't even blink as he agreed to it straightforwardly. Following that, he called Xiaoing out from the queue. Looking at the confused Xiaoing, a trace of affection flashed in Guhan's eyes. Xiaoing, you will follow Manor Lord June to deal with the strange races in the future. Why is that? Why must I be sent out alone before the big battle? Xiaoing was clearly unhappy. Although the Holy Lands had already declined, Xiaoing still had deep feelings for the Heaven Saint Palace. Xiaoing, the situation is very clear now. You can only better display your usefulness by being at Tian Fa's side to fight against the strange races. Right now, the Holy Lands are no longer able to give you the space to fully display your abilities. This is the truth, the reality. Guhan was indeed the #1 person in the Heaven Saint Palace. The moment Jun Moxie mentioned borrowing Xiaoying, he had already guessed that Jun Moxie must have some specific plan in mind. Xiao Ying stood there alone, suddenly feeling an unprecedented loneliness in this moment. In that moment, she was at a loss of what to do. Although the two camps were set up very close, Xiao Ying could vaguely sense that this departure of hers would most likely be the final farewell before the big battle. This indescribable ominous feeling caused her heart to be in a mess, and she was completely at a loss as to what to do. Xiaoying, you go over first, and look for Venerable Mei. Guhan waved his hands, a trace of reluctance in his eyes, as he continued. I'll have a few more words with Manor Lord Jun. Xiaoying nodded and looked deeply at the many companions she had spent time with in the Heaven Saint Palace. Tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. Turning around, she covered her face with her hands and ran out. Mei Shuyan went to welcome her from afar. The people from the Heaven Saint Palace, like Chengyin Xiao and Chu Wu Hui, were all smiling as they looked at Xiao Ying's receding figure, their eyes filled with warmth. Towards this little sister who had accompanied them for over 1,000 years, all of them doted on her from the bottom of their hearts. This departure would most likely be an eternal farewell. With her unique position, she should be much safer in Tian Fei's camp. At least, it would be safer than staying by our side. Because we've already. As Gu Han watched Xiao Ying being led into the camp by Mei Shiyan personally, he seemed to have let go of a burden in his heart and heaved a long sigh of relief. Turning to Jun Moxie, he said, Manor Lord Jun, this old man has a few words that I wish to speak with you about. Senior Gu, please speak. Jun Moxie stretched out his hand. Gu Han waved his hand, and a misty aura enveloped the entire space. After a slight tremor, the air became motionless. With a wave of Gu Han's hand, he had already sealed off the space within a 10-zhang radius. This way, he could ensure that no one would be able to hear their conversation. Chapter 1180. After Gu Han finished setting up, he turned around and looked at Jun Moxie. His expression was complicated, and his eyes were complicated. There seemed to be some kind of intense hope and also a deep sense of pleading. And it was this kind of gaze that made even a stone-hearted person like Jun Moxie's heart tremble. This old man has lived for 2 lifetimes. In total, I have lived for more than 5,000 years. Gu Han laughed bitterly. In my previous life, this old man's cultivation stopped at the peak of the Saint Venerable realm. I was unable to pass the heavenly tribulation. Left with no other choice, I dismembered myself under the heavenly tribulation and used my holy infant to reincarnate. I found a Xianxi aristocratic family with the surname Gu and merged with a pregnant woman who was about to give birth. Until today, I can be considered to have reached the peak of the 3rd level of the Saint Monarch realm. My parents of the Gu family have shown me great kindness. So, the past Wushan Yin has already disappeared. This old man is called Gu Han in this life. Only Gu Han. Gu Han's face revealed a look of reminiscence. As if thinking of his loving parents back then, he couldn't help but sigh softly. Jun Moxie nodded. Then, he frowned and asked, I won't hide it from Senior Gu. This junior has something that I don't understand. Please speak. Gu Han said gently. When I first met Senior Gu in the Heaven Saint Palace, Senior was in the starry sky, and there was the universe in your eyes. At that time, Senior's cultivation seemed to be much higher than it is now. Jun Moxie said, but I don't know why Senior's cultivation fell to such a level. Jun Moxie remembered very clearly that when he and Gu Han looked at each other, he was almost completely lost in the starry sky domain in the other party's eyes. And at that time, Gu Han's every movement had a kind of mystical rhythm. It was as if he had already faintly conformed with the heavenly Tao. That was a profound cultivation that could be said to be earth-shattering. Although the current Gu Han was still someone that no one could underestimate, he had lost that kind of mystical and transcendent state. The difference in their realms was simply incalculable. It wouldn't be wrong to say that they were 2 different people. So you noticed it too. Gu Han chuckled before saying in a slightly desolate tone, now that we are working together sincerely, My situation is not much of a secret, so I'll tell you all about it. On that day, I'd already reached the peak of the 4th level of the Saint Monarch realm. I was only a step away from the half-saint realm. In other words, the same realm that Zhang Kuang had reached. Therefore, during that period of time, he did not care about anything else. The only thing on his mind was to break through as soon as possible. He didn't deliberately make things difficult for you when you visited. In fact, he didn't even say anything when you practically ransacked the Heaven Saint Palace. That's because as long as I can break through that barrier, nothing else will be an obstacle to me. Jun Moxie, do you know what that kind of breakthrough is called? Guhan asked with a smile. What's it called? Jun Moxie asked with interest. Return to simplicity, become a man out of nothingness, the body of a half-saint, the soul of an endless. If you want to ascend to heaven, you must first be a man. That is a saint. Guhan's expression was solemn as he slowly recited these words. His expression was filled with sincerity. If you want to ascend to heaven, you must first be a man, Jun Moxie muttered. He seemed to have understood something. That's right, the most important point is this. Guhan said seriously. You must remember it well. It will definitely be beneficial to your future advancement. This is the greatest comprehension I've had in my 2 lives. Whether it's good or bad, you must remember it no matter what. You are a man. A man. You must be the source, a pure human. That's right. In this world, there are too few people who can be called human. Jun Moxie said slowly as he pondered. Actually, no matter what you do, if you want to do it well, you must first be a man. If you don't even have the qualifications to be a man, how can you talk about doing anything else? That's right. That's right. Guhan's face revealed a look of admiration. He was sincerely happy that Jun Moxie could comprehend it so quickly. The heavens are watching what a man does. Or perhaps the 3 holy lands have really gone overboard these few years. This old man has been too focused on his own interests, resulting in some problems with this man character of mine. Just when this old man felt that everything was ready and was preparing to charge through that barrier, Zhang Luanhan returned. Only Zhang Kuang came to Mount Heaven Saint. Guhan gritted his teeth as he said this. Jun Moxie suddenly realized that Guhan's decline in cultivation had a lot to do with Zhang Luanhan. The 9 illusory quicksand was stolen, and the formation collapsed instantly. Following that, the entire pillar of Heaven's mountains collapsed. This old man's spirit was severely injured at that time. The corner of Guhan's eyes twitched. This old man was originally charging forward without any distractions. My mind was in a mess, and at that moment, I was unable to restrain my mind from slipping. Instantly, my cultivation fell by 1.5 levels, all the way to the peak of the 3rd level of Saint Monarch before it finally stopped. As the saying goes, sailing against the current, if you don't advance, you will fall back. The fact that you didn't go berserk and become a cripple at that critical moment and suffered such a shocking disturbance is already a testament to the strength of your mind. Jun Moxie sighed, finally understanding where the problem was. No wonder the feeling of seeing Guhan this time was completely different from the last time. That's all for now. Jun Moxie, this old man wants to talk to you about serious matters. Guhan's expression turned serious. He looked at Jun Moxie's face and said slowly, This old man has a few requests. I hope that Manor Lord Jun will agree to them. Please speak. Jun Moxie also turned serious. As long as it's within my capabilities, I will definitely do it. This old man's greatest wish in this life is nothing more than to step into the realm of a saint, then break through the restrictions of this world, roam the skies, and roam the universe freely. Guhan said slowly. But now, all these hopes have all turned into bubbles and no longer have any meaning. Right now, this old man's only wish is to completely eradicate the strange races. This is something that the 3 holy lands are definitely unable to do. Guhan looked at Jun Moxie. This, I can only trouble you. I know that I don't have the qualifications to say this, but the countless lives on this continent are all in Manor Lord Jun's hands. Please. Senior is a little too pessimistic. It's not to that extent yet, right? Moxie said lightly. No, I'm the same as you. I've already seen it clearly. The three holy lands are already doomed. Guhan closed his eyes. After this battle, the three holy lands will no longer exist in this world. As for the aftermath, everything, we can only rely on you. Moxie? Moxie was shocked and raised his head to look at Guhan. A calm smile appeared on Guhan's face as he said lightly, this battle, no matter the final outcome, the three holy lands, this once glorious name, will be erased from this world. We have already decided to use our lives to protect the common people of this continent. As he said that, he smiled lightly and said, that day, you once said that whoever mentions the words common people of the world in front of you again, that person will have to die. I hope that today, this old man can say it for the last time. Moxie only felt as if his heart was being tossed and turned violently. As long as one was a person, they would always have a goal. Protecting the common people of the world, protecting the safety of the continent. Perhaps this was the belief that the three holy lands had upheld for the past 10,000 years. This was indeed a supreme glory. It was precisely for this glory that they had done too many wrong things. Among them, there were even many irreversible consequences. But similarly, for this glory, they had passed it down generation after generation without any complaints or regrets in a place far away from human habitation. The sacrifices they had made could not be said to be small, all for an illusory glory that not many people knew about. Right now, this glory had finally been cruelly shattered by Moxie. Facing the increasingly powerful strange races, they still chose to step forward bravely and face the danger with their own bodies, preparing to use their lives to wash away the mistakes of these 10,000 years. Lamentable, but also respectable. We have already decided that in this battle, everyone from the three holy lands will be sacrificed. Guhan seemed to be talking about a small matter that was not even worth mentioning. After we die, no matter what happens to this continent, no matter what happens to the common people, we are destined to not have the chance to see it. When that time comes, everything else will be your problem. I do not dare to hope that Manor Lord June will take care of the common people of the world, but I still have one request from Manor Lord June. If it is possible, please kill all the strange races. Moxie smiled bitterly. This old man Gu really thought too highly of him. To be honest, I do not know why, but I always have a strange intuition. That is, you have an unimaginable hatred for the strange races. Guhan furrowed his brows and suddenly smiled strangely. Otherwise, after the matter with Xiachong Tian, with your temper, you should have immediately retreated after killing Xiachong Tian and the rest, not bothering about the matters here anymore. Even if the Xian continent was completely enslaved by the strange races, you would not have stood out. I believe that with your character, you are definitely capable of doing that. But you chose to stay in the end. I believe that your motive for staying is not for the sake of the world, for the common people, or for the glory of Tian Fa. Then, I'm very curious. Why do you hate the strange races so much? It really makes me curious. Guhan asked with interest. They are very disgusting, aren't they? Is this reason enough? Moxie smiled wryly, but declined to comment. Why do I hate the strange races? As a typical nationalistic youth, this question was too easy to answer. But in this world, it was impossible to explain. How am I supposed to explain? It doesn't seem to make sense no matter how I explain it. Could it be that I'm venting my anger on them, because these disgusting, strange races remind me of a certain despicable and shameless race? A certain race whose entire country, from the old to the young, was still unable to vent their hatred even if they were to be executed 100,000 times? Could it be that I'm doing this because of the countless heinous crimes committed by the Japanese army during the 8 years of war? Could it be that I'm doing this because of the 300,000 innocent souls of the Nanjing massacre? There's no way to say it. There's no way to say it. I can only kill. Kill until the heavens and earth are turned upside down. Who knows, in my previous life, I only hated myself for being born 70 years too late. Chapter 1181. Disgusting. Guhan was taken aback. Then he laughed loudly in agreement. This is a very good reason. They are indeed disgusting. Just this bit of reason is enough to exterminate them. As a saint monarch, Guhan was naturally not a fool. With his thousands of years of wisdom and experience, how could he not see through June Moxie's insincerity? But no matter what, the reason was only secondary. Right now, June Moxie's undisguised hatred and killing intent towards the strange races was the most important. From now on, if there is really no more threat of the strange races, and there is no more 3 holy lands, leaving only the evil monarch manor and Tian Fa, you will need to be cautious. Guhan's words sounded like he was leaving behind some funeral arrangements. June Moxie, do not think that only humans can do evil. Do not think that only bad people can do evil in this world. Once a good person does evil, then the evil he does will be so great that even the bad people can't catch up to it. Please remember this old man's words. That makes sense. It can be said to be the truth. June Moxie sighed from the bottom of his heart. When a bad person does evil things, at least he himself will know that what he's doing is not a good thing, and he will have many reservations in his heart. But if a good person does a bad thing as a good thing, then the influence will be huge, because in his heart, this matter is right. It is glorious. With this kind of thinking, he has no reservations at all. He can use any methods and do his best to perfect the plan, doing everything possible to make this matter happen. And the people around him, out of their trust in this good person, would help him unconditionally, blindly, and help him. At that time, the level of destruction that would be caused was truly something that no one could predict. Wasn't there the best example right now? The 3 holy lands from before. If not for June Moxie's sudden appearance, bringing the last ray of light to this world, perhaps it would really be like that prophecy. It was a dream, neither an illusion nor an illusion. 10,000 years of glory, all gone in an instant. Guhan laughed bitterly. His thoughts were clearly the same as June Moxie's. But he didn't say it out loud, and June Moxie naturally wouldn't say it out loud either. Since the old man in front of him had already decided to atone for his sins with his death, then why should he mention what had happened before? Although a great mistake had been made, the starting point of a good person and a bad person was always different. Why destroy the last bit of dignity of a good person, especially now that he had realized his mistake and was determined to make up for it at all costs? When a man is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is the most sorrowful. I want to remind you that after this, you must properly restrain the Shin beasts of Tian Fa. Guhan said solemnly. Tian Fa Shin beasts are mostly simple-minded, without the scheming of humans. Their personalities are very cute. They dare to fight and charge, and can be said to be the cream of the crop of death warriors. Anyone would want to have such a subordinate, and you have indeed obtained the undying loyalty of Tian Fa. No one can doubt this. But precisely because of this, the personality of a Shin beast also means that they're the easiest to be bewitched by others. Once they accept a certain theory, they will not change it even if they die. This is where your greatest success lies. But on the other hand, it is also where you have to guard against them. In the future, without the restrictions of the Holy Lands, the peak experts of Tian Fa will come into contact with humans sooner or later. At that time, no one can be sure what the consequences will be. I hope Manor Lord June doesn't misunderstand that this old man is trying to scare you. Guhan said with a heavy heart. June Moxie lowered his head and thought deeply. I can guarantee that before I leave this continent, they will not do anything too out of line. Yes, you can guarantee it. I trust you 100%. If you, June Moxie, can't even do this, then you're not June Moxie. But what about after you leave? Guhan asked. Just now, you also said that the path you will walk on should be the 9 Nether First Young Master's path. Your future is limitless, and it's impossible for you to stay in this world, on this continent, for long. Perhaps 100 years later, or 1,000 years later, or even just 10 or 20 years later, you will leave. After you leave, who will be able to truly control Tian Fa? Guhan nodded towards Tian Fa's troops. In order to deal with the danger before us, you've already raised the strength of Tion Fa to an exceptionally terrifying level. With such strength, if they lose your control, perhaps no one in the entire continent will be able to keep any one of them in check. And you have nurtured over 100,000 of them. Perhaps this continent will not fall because of the strange races because of your existence. But also because of your existence, the Xian continent may become a paradise for the Xian beasts. Jun Moxie's face was dark, and it was hard to see any expression on it. If I were to think of it in a more pessimistic way, the humans of this continent may all become food or playthings for Tion Fa's Xian beasts. Guhan said coldly, Tion Fa's Xian beasts are very humane, and they're also very loyal. This is something that no one can deny, but at the same time, there is something that cannot be denied. That is, the ferocious nature of beasts still exists, and will exist forever. Their thirst for battle, their bloodthirsty instincts are all very obvious. Jun Moxie's face was very ugly. This old man is not saying all this to ask you to do anything, but it's just to remind you. Guhan said indifferently, if it really comes to that, oh, no matter what, this old man is destined to not be able to see it. What has the future got to do with this old man? Jun Moxie said indifferently, since you've already seen through this, then isn't it even more meaningless to say all this now? He rolled his eyes and said, Guhan, what you said this time is indeed very reasonable. In the future, these things may indeed happen, but that is ultimately a matter of the future. Who can truly know what will happen in the future? It's still too early for us to be talking about this. Guhan laughed bitterly. From Jun Moxie's words, he could tell how much Jun Moxie loved Tion Fa's Xian beasts. Most likely, in this evil monarch's heart, the people of the world really could not compare to Tion Fa's Xian beasts. This matter was truly strange to Guhan. No matter what, Jun Moxie was still a human in his bones. Why didn't he have any sense of recognition towards humans? This was something that he really couldn't understand, even if he died. He was not a fish, so he naturally didn't know the joys of fish. All right, this old man will suppress this matter and not mention it again, lest we become unhappy. Guhan sighed helplessly. It doesn't matter. I have my own views in my heart. No matter what you say or what anyone else says, it's impossible to change my mind. Jun Moxie chuckled. So, you'd better save it. Hurry up and explain everything that needs to be explained in one go. Guhan rolled his eyes in anger. What do you mean by hurry up and explain everything that needs to be explained in one go? Even if this old man is about to die, it's not to that extent yet, right? It's as if I'll be done for after this. One really has to be prepared to be angered to death at any moment when speaking to this brat. What are you looking at me for? Jun Moxie couldn't help but feel confused when he saw Guhan glaring at him. I say, old Gu, I didn't take the initiative to curse you to die, right? You were the one who said that you had enough of living and wanted to die. I was respecting your opinion and didn't stop you, but you're unhappy again. Besides, you were the one who dragged me here, saying that I wanted to listen to your nagging. Nagging. I'll just nagging, but you're not saying it now. What the hell is this? So depressing. Depressing. When he heard the last three words, Guhan truly felt this way. You're still depressed? This old man is so depressed that he almost can't speak. Forget it. This old man is a person who's about to die. I won't lower myself to your level. Guhan exhaled, wanted to end this argument. That's right. Didn't you admit that you're a person who's about to die? You said it yourself. I didn't say it. Jun Moxie snorted. What last words do you have? Hurry up and say it. I still have many things to do. I'm in a hurry. Guhan almost fainted. Damn it. Even if I don't have the will to die, I'll probably be angered to death by this bastard. Jun Moxie, you're really too cold towards life. Don't you feel that even though our three holy lands have done many wrong things in this final battle, we'll still fight valiantly, fight brilliantly, and live up to our legendary name? Guhan was depressed to death. Old Gu revealed the final plan of the three holy lands. At the end of the day, he still hoped to receive a word of praise from Jun Moxie. At the very least, in this world, there would still be someone who understood the truth. Even if the entire world doesn't know, we've still sacrificed a lot. At the very least, there's an evil monarch as a witness. Right now, the only thing he hoped for was for this evil monarch to say a word of praise. That was all. Because right now, Jun Moxie was already a person who stood at the peak of the world. Who would have thought that this brat would be stingy to such an extent? Not to mention praise. He didn't even say a word of pity. Chapter 1182. Hearing that, Guhan was taken aback. Then he stroked his beard and smiled. That's right. In his heart, Jun Moxie was still able to see things clearly. Jun Moxie continued. You also said earlier that if you die, you won't be able to see anything in the future. Then, since that's the case, why do you need to care about what will happen to the world after you die? When I was alive, I worked my heart out for the country, the people, and the world. But after I die, why do I still need to think about the flood of the world? Guhan was taken aback. He used all his strength to break off a strand of his beard. This Jun Moxie, I just expressed my agreement with a few sentences, and he's already flirting with me again. This person's way of doing things is really laughable. What's more, you died to defend your honor and dignity. Isn't that so? Jun Moxie continued. In this world, there are people like this dying every day. The wife is having an affair, and the husband is cuckolded. In a fit of rage, for the sake of his own dignity, he fights with the adulterer and ultimately dies. Isn't this also for the sake of protecting his own dignity? If you look at the reason, how different are the two? Jun Moxie continued as though it was a matter of fact. Since everyone is fighting for their own dignity, for their own glory, for their own interests to not be infringed upon, could it be that there's no fundamental difference? Why do I have to lament a few words about your deaths? Could it be that if I lament a few words, you guys will become immortals? Guhan was so angry that his beard was trembling. His limbs were trembling, and his face was turning blue. If not for the fact that this time and place were really not suitable, Guhan really wanted to have a battle to the death with Jun Moxie right now. This is too shameful. We died in battle for the sake of the world, but in his mouth, we actually received the same evaluation as those useless men who were cuckolded. This was simply going too far. Truly intolerable. Jun yeah. Guhan panted heavily, his eyes extremely malevolent as he roared in a low voice. Old Gu, you're losing your composure. Jun Moxie kindly reminded him. This old man lost his composure. This old man lost his composure, your head. Guhan panted heavily. You scoundrel who can anger people to death just by opening your mouth. You're really pissing me off. It had to be said that the sharp-tongued great elder of Heaven's St. Palace was indeed not his forte. Although her face was flushed red, she didn't curse out loud. Jun Moxie was about to open his mouth again when Guhan stretched out his hand, panting heavily as he stopped him. Don't. Please don't speak for now. Wait until I'm done. Jun Moxie was stunned. What was going on? Why did he become you? Apart from a war, there's another source of trouble. Jean Luen Hui. This person is still not dead. Guhan took a few deep breaths before he managed to calm himself down. This was the first time in more than 3,000 years that his emotions had fluctuated so violently. Even when he found out that Jean Luen Hui had stolen the 9 illusory quicksand, he didn't feel so stifled. Regardless of whether the 3 holy lands are still around after this war, you must be careful of Jean Luen Hui. Guhan calmed himself down and said in one breath. Also, the 9 illusory quicksand is extremely useful for the soul, and the amount that Jean Luen Hui had stolen is so huge. If you meet him, you must be careful. Don't be careless. Zhang Kuang's level of terror is not something you can imagine at your current level. Jun Moxie was silent for a moment before he said, Many thanks. Thank your head. Guhan said angrily. This old man is already very lucky that I didn't die from anger just now. I wonder if Senior is still as agitated as before? Jun Moxie blinked and asked. Guhan laughed helplessly. I know what you mean. You want to anger this old man to the point where he can't control his anger and vent it out to lessen my desire to die, right? But you've wasted your efforts, and this old man has also been angered by you for nothing. He let out a long sigh and said with a desolate expression, "The three holy lands have been passed down for more than 10,000 years. It can be said to be the result of the hard work of countless people. This old man has presided over the three holy lands for 2 generations, more than 5,000 years. And the three holy lands, Heaven's Saint Palace, can be said to be the culmination of this old man's life. The pillar of Heaven's mountains collapsed, Heaven's Saint Palace was destroyed, and my skills fell from the peak to where I am now. At that time, this old man already felt that this old man's path in life had already come to an end. You don't have to say anything more. You're mistaken. I didn't say that I'm stopping you from dying." Jun Moxie was silent for a moment before he said, "I just want to ask you for one thing." "Ask me for one thing? How rare. Say it." Guhan said straightforwardly. "The atmosphere in the three holy lands right now is a little too pessimistic and tragic. Guhan, look at your subordinates. All of them look like they're carrying a volcano on their shoulders. Their entire bodies are filled with a kind of urgency to die in battle at any time." Jun Moxie snorted lang-lang and said, "That's right. This is the spirit that we should have when we're willing to sacrifice our lives for the mainland. Is there something wrong with that?" Guhan asked in confusion. "I'm not questioning your determination, nor am I asking you to let go of this desire to die. What I'm asking is that even if you really have to die, you must die with the greatest value." Jun Moxie pointed a finger. "Guhan, including yourself, everyone in the three holy lands holds the same thought. Then let me ask you, once the battle officially starts, how many experts from the Holy Lands will be so impatient that they'll rush to self-detonate?" Guhan was stunned. Indeed, as Jun Moxie had said, there were many people in the Holy Lands who held the same thought. As long as the battle started, they would rush into the strange races and self-detonate. They would seek a quick release. They would kill the enemy and atone for their sins. With the power of a Saint Emperor, he can easily kill hundreds of non-humankind warriors, dozens of hell-enduring ghosts, and even a few peak-level Frenzy Blade enduring Earths. Only then will he self-detonate, and he can drag many more down with him. If you self-detonate right away, don't you think it's a waste? Jun Moxie said lightly, "Even if you really have to die, you must die with the greatest value. If you can kill 10,000 people before dying, why do you have to self-detonate when you've only killed 100? Since you've decided to die in battle, why not bring out the last bit of value you have? So I'm asking you to fight with a normal heart. Only when there's really no way out, when there's no other way, then self-detonate." Jun Moxie rolled his eyes, and 2 rays of cold light shot out from his eyes. "Don't think that I'm ruthless. I'm not only saying this to you guys. I've also said this to my brothers, and even to myself, because this is not just your battle, it's our battle. If we're talking about deaths, the number of people that the 3 holy lands have right now is only a fraction of what we have. Death, in this battle, is a possibility for anyone. It's possible that all of you have died, and I'm still alive. But it's also possible that all of us have died, and the one left alive is your holy lands people. This is something that no one can say for sure. Everything is decided by man, and fate is decided by the heavens." Jun Moxie slowly turned his head and said, "Old Gu, you've lived for 5,000 years, and your understanding of the cruelty of war is much clearer than mine. War is just like that. No one has ever said that someone will definitely not die in this battle, and that person will definitely not die. Instead, that person might be the first to die, and die the fastest. So, please don't leave any funeral arrangements to me. I might not be able to survive, and I might even need to rely on you to help me collect my corpse. And perhaps there's no corpse to collect anymore, because if I'm destined to die, I'll definitely drag as many enemies as I can with me before I die. To lighten your burden a little, I hope that you guys can do the same. At least don't explode into fireworks for the sake of some bullsh asterisk T glory of the 3 holy lands. If I wanted to watch the fireworks, it wouldn't be worth it to come all the way here." Jun Moxie looked at Guhan coldly and said, "So, I'm begging you guys, don't die so stupidly and don't die so retarded." Because if that's the case, even if you guys die, I'll still look down on you 10,000 times. Even if you guys kill yourselves after winning, I won't stop you. But in this battle where there's little hope, please fight with all your might, and don't just think about exploding yourselves. Do you understand? Guhan was completely stunned. Yes, everyone on his side already felt that there was no hope for this battle. At least, this was the case for the three Holy Lands. That was why they made this decision to die for a noble cause. But could he refute Jun Moxie's words? On what basis could he be sure that Jun Moxie, Tion Fa, and the evil Monarch Manor's forces would not die? His words woke him up from his dreams. If he was already so pessimistic and only wanted to pass all the responsibility to Jun Moxie and ignore it, this was an extremely selfish and irresponsible way of doing things. So this old man was wrong. I nearly made a huge mistake again. Guhan sighed in shame. He felt so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. Just a moment ago, he thought that he was very heroic and tragic. But now, he realized that he was a complete and utter fool. The one who really didn't care about the big picture was actually himself and everyone from the three Holy Lands. Death is a very easy thing. As long as you close your eyes, everything will end. But in this world, there are too many things that are even crueler than death. Jun Moxie said leisurely, "Don't think that everything will end just like that. Only cowards will use death to escape. Right now, all of you are just a bunch of cowards who can't wait to use death to escape from your responsibilities." Guhan was sweating profusely, and he felt his heart beating faster. Chapter 1183. Jun Moxie said coldly, "Guhan, Senior Gu, I want you to remember this. From now on, I do not wish to hear anyone say the words, 'I want to die,' in front of me. If there is, I will immediately fulfill his wish. There is no need for him to find the strange races and play self-destruct. I can grant him his wish immediately. Letting him die without any pain is definitely better than self-destructing. I can even leave his corpse intact." Jun Mo slowly turned around, his back facing Guhan as he said coldly, "Perhaps you haven't realized how much of a blow such a sentence would have on the morale of your own army. Perhaps you might even think that it's very stirring and moving, and you might even be moved to tears. But to me, anyone who says such a sentence at this time and place is an unforgivable sin. Not even 1,000 cuts and 10,000 reincarnations can atone for their sins. Dying for being cuckolded by his wife is at most the only one who dies. But if you all die like this, it will indirectly send countless of my brothers to their graves. So many saint venerables and saint monarchs have already committed suicide in despair. What use are we, who are even weaker? Is there any meaning in resisting? Take a guess. Will there be anyone who thinks this way? And how many people will think this way?" Jun Moxie said mockingly, "Don't think that my words earlier were insulting you all and desecrating your spirit. It is truly because of your rash self-destructions that you are inferior to those men whose wives committed adultery and went to find someone else to die. From the way I see it, they at least have some vigor. But all of you don't even have that bit of vigor. The so-called 10,000 years of glory, the final glory, all of you protect it with all your might. But in your hearts, all of these are not even worth a fart." Slowly taking 2 steps forward, Jun Moxie raised his hand and lightly knocked on the sealed spatial wall. "Old Gu, don't tell me you want me to forcefully break open your spatial seal and get out. Please wait a moment. I still have one last thing to ask of Manor Lord Jun." When Guhan turned around, Jun Moxie almost jumped in fright. Guhan's hair had actually turned completely white in this short period of time. The first time they met, Guhan still had jet black hair and looked no different from a middle-aged man. And the second time they met on this pillar of heaven's mountains, Guhan, whose vitality was greatly injured, already had a head of white hair, wrinkles appearing on his face, and the signs of aging were obvious. However, in just a few short days, Guhan's hair had actually turned completely white at this moment. In the short span of less than 7 days, this great sage had suffered too great of a blow. First, the Heaven's Saint Palace, which they had protected for 2 lifetimes, was suddenly destroyed, and the heavenly Pillar Mountains, which separated the 2 sides of the continent, had also collapsed. It was as if the faith in his heart had been taken away by someone. His entire body had almost become an empty shell. But that was not all. The mysterious skill that he had been proud of all his life had suddenly slipped when he was about to break through the most important threshold. It dropped by a large margin. If that was all, he could still hold on. But soon after, he found out that the 10,000 years of protection of the Holy Lands, the 5,000 years he had spent in the war for seizing the heavens, was actually a huge mistake. This kind of blow completely crushed his spirit. His only goal was death. Death was his only goal. They would perish together with the outsiders. But now, he was told this kind of death was only escaping and was the most shameful and cowardly act. In fact, it was even worse than those men who had been cuckolded. Guhan had broken down. It was a complete and utter collapse. His profound Xian cultivation had completely collapsed at this moment, and the appearance that he had maintained for thousands of years had withered in an instant. But Jun Moxie still felt that there should be other reasons. Regardless of Guhan or the legendary Wu Shan-yun, they should not be this weak. Finally, I have a personal matter to ask of you. Guhan fell silent for a long time, until Jun Moxie was about to lose his patience. Only then did he turn around shakily, his eyes glistening with tears. Please, 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 take good care of Xiaoying. Jun Moxie could not help but fall silent. Xiaoying is a pitiful girl. The all-seeing eye created her, but it was also because of the all-seeing eye that she was brought into the Heaven's Saint Palace at a young age. She spent thousands of years alone. Although she has lived for many years, her heart is still stuck in the prime of her youth. The happiness that a woman should enjoy, the love of a husband and children. She has none of that. None of that. For the Holy Lands, for the war, for seizing the heavens. She has given up everything. Now, I entrust her to you. Guhan looked at Jun Moxie, his eyes filled with pleading. I hope that you can take good care of her. If possible, if she is still alive after this battle, this old man hopes that she can find her own home, find her own happiness, the happiness of a woman. Jun Moxie still maintained his silence, because he could tell that Guhan had not finished speaking and should have other instructions. But Guhan stopped, his expression filled with sorrow and sorrow. I'm very curious. Other than the people closest to her, no one should know that Xiaoying has the yin-yang eyes. Even those closest to her might not understand what she has. Junimo, Xie said indifferently. This kind of thing is not a rare thing. People often say that children can see strange things. As time goes by, this kind of innate talent will gradually disappear, and they will become ordinary people. He coughed and said, Why was only Xiaoying discovered by you? Is it really a coincidence? Guhan's body trembled, and he did not speak for a long, long time. His eyes stared at the sky, and his lifeless gaze slowly turned red. He finally closed his eyes, and with a tone as if he was about to die, he said, Because Xiaoying's father is not an ordinary person. She is my daughter. Although Jun Moxie had already guessed something, he was still shocked by this sentence. Guhan's love for Xiaoying, as well as that reluctance earlier. And after Xiaoying went to Tian Fei's camp, Guhan's relaxed expression made Jun Moxie feel that something was amiss. But he did not expect that Xiaoying was Guhan's daughter, because the difference in age between the two was too great. Love has always been difficult. When this old man was in Heaven's Saint Palace in this life, my beloved wife had already passed away 200 years ago. Guhan said bitterly. There was a period of time when I missed her day and night, often dreaming of her alone at the peak of a mountain, quietly reminiscing about the past. But at that time, I discovered that it was precisely because of those days of deep affection and persistence that my skills improved greatly. Normally, I would not be able to break through the bottleneck, but at that time, I easily passed it. Because at that time, other than my deceased wife, there was really nothing else in my heart. Instead, my mind was clear, and my cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. My emotions, my love, my heart. June Moxie sighed lightly. He could almost guess what Guhan was going to say next. After 1,000 years, this old man's heart had already reached the state of a dry well, without any ripples. And my cultivation also quietened down. For a long time, there were no signs of a breakthrough. At the start, this old man did not think much of it, and only thought that success would come naturally. But after a few hundred years, I still maintained the same state. This old man then thought of how I could break through my cultivation because I missed my deceased wife. But at that time, my wife had already passed away for 1,500 years. Even if I forced myself to recall it, all the memories were so blurry. In fact, there was no longer any sadness. Guhan said in a low voice, "So you thought that instead of being like that, you might as well enter the world again and try to break through the barrier of love?" June Moxie sighed. He really did not know whether to reprimand him or scold him. This kind of situation was not uncommon. Some people use the power of hatred to break through. Some use the power of dual cultivation with women to break through, and some simply use the power of bloodthirst and cruelty to break through. But one thing was certain. No matter what one used, as long as one relied on external forces, they would definitely not be able to reach the true peak. Especially this kind of deliberate method. Guhan obviously planned to use the immersion of love to break through. That was not a very strange method. That's right. Guhan nodded. At that time, this old man had cultivated for 2 lifetimes. Using the name Guhan, I was still over 1,700 years old. But because of my profound cultivation and my ability to maintain my youthfulness, I looked like a 30-year-old man. And after changing my appearance, I was like a completely different person from my original appearance. After descending the mountain, it did not take me much effort to find a suitable candidate. Guhan took a sorrowful breath and said, "I wholeheartedly wanted to pursue that feeling of heartbreak. Naturally, I found a lady who did not have high talent and could not cultivate profound strength. I still remember her name, Xiao Qingyi. She was a good lady who was beautiful and intelligent, but she was born with a weak body. This old man. Guhan could barely speak. This old man wanted to love her with all my heart and give all my feelings, but I also had to watch her die. This kind of feeling is really, a few years later, she gave birth to a daughter for me. Just like that, her body became even weaker. After another 2 years, she could not recover from her illness and finally passed away." Guhan's voice trembled. Before she died, she grabbed my hand and said, "No matter what, I have to take good care of our daughter." Then, she said one sentence and did not look at me anymore. But her last sentence, even until now, every time I think about it, this old man's heart breaks and I feel so guilty. She said, "I know you are a capable person. I don't blame you. To be able to be with you for these few years, to be husband and wife, I'm very satisfied, really very satisfied. This life is enough." Guhan's old tears flowed down, and suddenly he was sobbing uncontrollably. June Xia let out a deep sigh. Another girl with a pure heart. But it was a pity that since ancient times, beauties often had unlucky fates. This Guhan was really ruthless. And although his experience was created by himself, it was indeed tragic enough. Chapter 1184. With the sharpness of a woman's senses, it would be strange if this person who had slept by his side for so long could not detect any abnormalities in Guhan. But the rarest thing was that this woman did not ask for anything from the start to the end. She hid everything in her heart, afraid that if she mentioned it, it would ruin this beautiful marriage. She was already satisfied to be able to stay with the person she loved for a few years, and had no other requests. The only thing she was worried about was her own daughter. Perhaps it was this deep love and understanding that caused Guhan to suffer for his entire life, until now. Extreme love, extreme heart. But this kind of purposefulness caused him to suffer for thousands of years, and he could not forget it, especially when Xiao Ying was constantly reminding him. This old man had originally wanted to entrust Inger to a worthy relative and let her live an ordinary but wealthy life. But unexpectedly, I discovered that Inger actually had a natural eye for beauty. Gu Han let out a long sigh, and after a long while, he said, "During the war for seizing the heavens, the strange race's concealment techniques caused unimaginable casualties to us. So you brought your own daughter to the heavenly Saint Mountain and used the name of the world to imprison your own daughter for thousands of years. And because of that, you also destroyed her lifelong happiness. What a great father." Jun Moxie said coldly and sharply. In truth, Jun Moxie could not help but sigh in his heart. These people from the three holy lands, for the sake of the war for seizing the heavens, how many had they sacrificed? What they sacrificed was not only their lives, but also their kinship, friendship, love, and everything else. Stupid? Noble? Worthy of respect? Or worthy of cursing? At this moment, Jun Moxie only felt that his heart was in a mess. He could use the perspective of a father to criticize Gu Han, and use the crime of being a fickle lover to criticize him. But as for everything else, Jun Moxie could not find a suitable reason to criticize him. This kind of spirit, he really did not know how to evaluate it. Should he praise him, or should he criticize him? Looking at Gu Han in front of him, Jun Moxie really did not know what kind of opinion he should have towards him. Should he admire him, despise him, scold him, praise him? The saying that a pitiful person must have a hateful side was absolutely true. But to be able to make Jun Moxie feel so complicated in his heart, whether it was in his previous life or this life, he was truly the first person in both worlds. She hated him to the extreme and despised him to the extreme. But in his heart, he also felt some admiration and reverence. If their positions were reversed, Jun Moxie knew that he would never make such a huge sacrifice. Even if he really took the world as his responsibility, he still couldn't do it. He was neither as heartless as Gu Han, nor as emotional as Gu Han. But Gu Han's heartlessness was towards his family. He had feelings, but it was for the world. Jun Moxie was the complete opposite of him. They said that Gu Han was vicious and merciless, but he truly cared for the world and blessed the people. They said that he was a man with lofty ideals, heroic and chivalrous, but he watched his beloved wife die with his own eyes and personally raised his own daughter to become a tool of war in the war for seizing the heavens. He was unreservedly pious towards the world, his ideals, his legacy, and his glory. But only towards his own family was he so cruel and vicious. Such a person, if it were you, how would you evaluate him? I think, since Xiao Ying was named after her mother, she should still be unaware of her own birth, right? Much less knowing that she has such a noble father. Jun Moxie asked Ling Ling. As for Xiao Ying's current birth, with Gu Han's ability, it was simply too easy to create a false impression for her. There was no difficulty at all. Of course she doesn't know. How could I let her know? Gu Han said, "I already owe the mother and daughter too much. I feel proud for Xiao Ying to have such a noble father like you." Jun Moxie said mockingly, "You have indeed given up everything for the Holy Lands. Even your own beloved was used as a training tool, your own daughter as a tool of war, and even you, yourself, have invested your entire life. No, 2 lifetimes. Admirable, admirable." Gu Han gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds, his face extremely twisted. As if there was an intense pain in his heart, he suddenly said hoarsely, "In my 2 lifetimes, this is the only bloodline I have. How could I not want to give my daughter a good ending? To let her live a prosperous and peaceful life? How could I not want to hug my daughter and cry? How could I not want to give her the happiness she deserves, to pour out our hearts to each other? How could I not want? I want to die. But if I did that, what would happen to the people of the world? Without the help of Xiao Ying's all-seeing eye, could I just watch my brothers die one by one in the hands of the strange races? Be forced to perish together with the strange races, sacrificing themselves heroically? Yes, I despicably sacrificed my daughter's happiness. But do you know how much my daughter has saved for the Holy Lands? Guhan clenched his fists tightly. Those are also my brothers. They are also my brothers and sisters. Could it be that my daughter deserves to enjoy happiness while they deserve to die? Yes, what you have said is absolutely correct. But what you shouldn't have done, and what I find most displeasing to the eye, is that you have placed such a heavy responsibility on a woman. June Moxie Langlang said, Then, what's the use of men in this world? Those brothers of yours have already enjoyed what they deserve. Beautiful wives and concubines, children and children, changing batch after batch. For thousands of years, just their wives and concubines alone are enough to form a mountain of corpses. Why didn't you say all this? June Moxie said fiercely, They have already enjoyed what ordinary people cannot. Even if they die, it is only right. But you allowed your daughter to live for thousands of years, but the colors of life have not even begun to unfold. How cruel is this great father of yours? This world is ultimately still a society where men are supreme. Men, while enjoying privileges, also have corresponding duties. If those responsibilities that should be shouldered by men are forcefully placed on women, in exchange for the survival of men, if those brothers of yours still have a bit of conscience, they would have long committed suicide out of shame, instead of shamelessly using that woman's talent time and time again to open up a shortcut to victory for them, to calmly obtain glory and praise, as well as those illusory and laughable glory that is not even worth a fart. Such a victory is dirty, downright filthy, and despicable. June Moxie said sternly, Even if you have done so many things for this mainland, it is still shameful. Such safety, if you still have the slightest bit of bravery as a man, you should feel ashamed. If you still have the dignity of a man, you should feel ashamed. The lives that you have protected are not even worth a fart. War has always belonged to men. Men on the battlefield, dying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, that is also what they deserve. But you want to let a woman who is already in a weak position to go into battle, to bear such a heavy responsibility, and even at the cost of that woman's lifelong happiness, eternal loneliness. Can you really have a clear conscience? Not only was June Moxie a typical nationalist, he was also a typical male chauvinist. In his previous life, every time he saw the royal family send off their princesses in the name of marriage, he would scold them violently. A war that belongs to men. On what basis should women be pushed to be sacrificed? Using a woman's crotch in exchange for peace, could it be that all the men in the world could live with a clear conscience, singing and dancing in celebration of peace? What kind of F***up theory was that? Bastard logic. Cowardly logic. So, when he heard that Guhan sacrificed his daughter, June Moxie's words were like firecrackers, extremely sharp, extremely incisive, merciless. Towards the end, his tone was harsh and harsh. From Guhan's point of view, perhaps it was not wrong. Perhaps it was worth praising. But June Moxie had never agreed with such a method. Or perhaps he had gone too far, too extreme. But June Moxie had always been an extreme person. This kind of thinking was deeply rooted in his heart. If someone told him that as long as they sacrificed Mei Shuiyin or any other woman from the June family, they would be able to bring peace to the world, to the continent, then June Moxie's first reaction would definitely be to slaughter that person's entire family. Guhan listened to June Moxie's series of accusations in a stupefied manner, but he did not say a word. After a long time, he sighed softly and said, Regardless of whether my choice was right or wrong, I have already done it. Now that is on your side. I entrust her safety to you. Life or death in this battle. It is up to the heavens. But if we can survive, I hope that you can take care of her for me. June Moxie laughed coldly. Now, you finally remember that she is your biological daughter? After thousands of years, you finally remember the deep love between father and daughter? Just before you fall, you finally remember a little bit of your bloodline? Guhan, you are such a hypocrite. It doesn't matter if you're hypocritical, shameless, or despicable. You can say whatever you want. Guhan's voice also became agitated. In the end, it cannot cover up the fact that blood is thicker than water. Of course it cannot be covered up. But I, June Moxie, do not have the obligation to take care of your daughter for you. On what basis? I must bear this responsibility. June Moxie said coldly. This is your own matter. You settle it yourself. I want you to marry her. Guhan suddenly turned around and grabbed June Moxie's collar. He gritted his teeth and said, marry her. Take care of her. This old man can see that in these thousands of years, she only treats you differently. Are you kidding me? I should marry her just because she treats me differently? June Moxie laughed coldly and said, in that case, the number of women I should marry in this world is truly too many. From the way I see it, every single woman with a bit of beauty in this world treats me differently. Then should I marry all of them? I don't care about others, but you have to take good care of my daughter. Guhan panted a few times and suddenly smiled slyly. June Moxie, this is all I have to say. Do you think that this old man can't see that little bit of perverted heart of yours? What a joke, we are all men. When you first went to Mount Heaven's Saint, this old man had already seen it. In this world, the only one suitable for is you. Of course I have perverted heart. Perverted heart is something that all men have. As long as they are men, they will take a few more glances when they see a beautiful lady. June Moxie was indeed thick-skinned. Even after being pointed out by the lady's father, he did not turn red at all. Instead, he said fiercely, I only want to play around. I have no intention of marrying her at all. Not to mention anything else. Just based on the fact that she is your daughter, this old man will not marry her if I say so. Chapter 1185. As he said that, June Moxie pointed at Guhan's hand that was grabbing onto his clothes. Let go. What did you say? Just playing? Guhan's gaze instantly turned extremely dangerous as he stared at June Moxie's eyes. June Moxie stared back provocatively, a cold smile hanging on his lips. But Guhan laughed lightly and let go of his hand. Since you said it's just playing, then let's play. Then let's have fun and continue to have fun. If the evil monarch wants to play, what can a dying man like me do? Even if I don't accept my fate, what can I do? June Moxie was dumbfounded. He really didn't expect such a reply and couldn't help but scold. F*CKU. What the F*CK are you saying? That's your daughter. Human words. Why? Manor Lord June doesn't understand. Guhan laughed. This old man has nothing else to say and will not continue to be angry with you here. Guhan grunted and said, one more thing, she's not my daughter. Please remember, never let her know that she's my daughter. This is this old man's last request to you. After saying that, Guhan suddenly released the spatial lock and walked out. With 2 steps, he was already in the midst of the experts from the Holy Lands. Although his hair and beard were already snow white, his expression actually became exceptionally relaxed. His aura was even more majestic, as if he had suddenly become a different person. Although he hadn't recovered to the height that June Moxie had when they first met, he was like a completely different person from before. Whether he was right or wrong, his entire life's worth of merits and demerits were all clearly discussed with June Moxie during the spatial lock earlier. Even if he was wrong, he had already protected the continent for tens of thousands of years. Even if he was right and had merits, he had also done too many extremely wrong things. But right now, all of this was no longer important. The only important thing was the battle in front of him. Guhan snorted disdainfully at June Moxie's words of playing around. If the evil monarch was actually such an irresponsible person, then Guhan could only admit that he had misjudged him. As he had said before, no matter what you do, I won't know. June Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry when faced with a person who went from being extremely responsible to being extremely irresponsible in just a second. Damn it, what the hell is this? What kind of person was this? But June Moxie also knew that regardless of Guhan's pain, guilt, or shame, the moment he walked out of this spatial lock, everything had turned into nothingness, because he had already transferred everything that had happened here onto himself. Guhan really did not want to live anymore. Similarly, the Holy Land was destined to become a phantom in this battle, an existence that would only be recorded in the history books. This was their only pursuit now, and it was also their greatest dream. Even if Jun Moxie knelt down and begged them, they wouldn't change their minds. Their hearts were dead. Jun Moxie couldn't stop their deaths, even if he wanted to. Furthermore, he didn't want to stop them. Just like what he had said before, even if they had to die, they had to pay the greatest price. This was Jun Moxie's only request. This request could be cold-blooded, utilitarian, or cruel, but it was the only request he could make. Only like this would it be of considerable value to this battle. Only like this would it be responsible to the Xian continent. If he allowed these experts to self-destruct just because they were facing some small fries, then Jun Dashao would really want to cry, but have no tears. A man of war, live freely and die heroically, have a clear conscience, and have no regrets in this life. Even if they turned into smoke in the end, it would still be a heroic sunset. This is a man. This is a man worthy of a name. This was not only the request that Jun Moxie had for the 3 Holy Lands, it was also the request that he had for all his subordinates, for all the warriors of Tian Fa, and more importantly, for himself. A rumbling sound suddenly rang out from afar. The reinforcement from Tian Fa had finally arrived. All the flying Xian beasts of 7th level and above were sent out at the same time. Although they were not strong enough and needed to rest, they still managed to send a large number of troops over at this critical moment. When Jun Moxie went over, Mei Shuyan was taking stock of the troops. She also informed Jun Moxie of a piece of good news. Other than the Rock Tribe and Monkey Tribe, who were slightly weaker and were still on their way, the Lion Tribe, Leopard Tribe, Condor Tribe, and Wolf Tribe, with 5,000 warriors from each tribe, had already arrived at the encampment. This greatly alleviated the already stretched battle strength of their side. Up until now, Tian Fa's total battle strength had reached 34,000 people, while the Holy Lands still had 7,000 people. The total number of combatants on both sides was 41,000, and even the weakest among them was at the Venerable Realm. Everyone was fully prepared for battle. At noon, with Guhan in the lead, he led Mo Wu Dao and the other members of the 3 Holy Lands into 10 teams and arrived at Tian Fa's encampment in an orderly manner, accepting Jun Moxie's command. Jun Moxie did not reject this action of the Holy Lands. Instead, he accepted it. No matter how dirty or how much hatred they had in the past, at this moment, they were all comrades standing in the same trench. The only exception was the 5 people who originally followed Xia Chong Tian. No matter what, they were unwilling to form a team with the other people from the Holy Lands and stayed outside alone. No matter how Guhan tried to move them with emotion, reason, they still did not change their original intentions. We will definitely participate in this calamity, but we will definitely not form a team with you. We will kill our own people, and we don't need you to care whether we live or die. Since you all stood by and did nothing when we were being sought for revenge, then why should we listen to you now? At the same time, we will never accept any kind of command, especially from our enemies. Although they did not say it out loud, their expressions and actions were clear. To this, Jun Moxie directly ignored it. He even stopped those who wanted to persuade them. They could do whatever they wanted. Even if they wanted to self-destruct, no one would stop them. A large-scale war involving hundreds of thousands of people could break out at any time. It didn't matter if there were more or less people. Do you think that people will coax you just because you throw a tantrum like this? This young master does not have the time for that. When the Palace Lord of Hermitage, or rather the former Palace Lord, Mo Wu Dao, walked in, his face was dark, and he did not say a word. He only stared at Jun Moxie with a complicated gaze. Unfortunately, Jun Moxie still did not have the time to bother with him. No matter how complicated his gaze was, it was meaningless to the current situation. On the other hand, June Moxie had a few warm words with one of the guards of the battlefield for seizing the heavens. Senior Lung Tong, long time no see. How have you been? Lung Tong laughed bitterly and couldn't help but sigh. Manor Lord June, your speed is truly number one in all of history. I'm impressed. The number one in all of history was naturally not referring to June Moxie's speed of movement, but his advancement speed. June Moxie's advancement speed was truly a little too monstrous. Even a nine-nether first young master did not have such a speed. A youth who was not even 20 years old actually possessed the legendary 4th level Saint Monarch speed. This was the most unbelievable thing. Furthermore, this youth was just a wastrel who could not even be considered a Xian cultivator 3 years ago. June Moxie laughed heartily and said sincerely, Senior Lung Tong, this June still has to thank you for distinguishing right from wrong back then. When I think of Senior's elegance back then, I can't help but reminisce about it. Lung Tong laughed and said, preposterous. At that time, I was just pushing the boat along with the current. I believe that even if I didn't make that choice, you would still have the ability to resolve the crisis that time without suffering any losses. Besides, you already had the upper hand at that time, huh? Although that's the case, June Moxie still owes you a favor. June Moxie laughed before his expression turned serious. Will you be moving together with the Holy Lands this time? This question was basically asking Lung Tong if he was prepared to die for this trip. Of course, spilling my blood here is my greatest honor. It is also my greatest wish, Lung Tong said solemnly. I, Lung Tong, have cultivated my entire life for nothing more than this battle. Good. June Moxie nodded his head slowly and let out a long sigh. Lung Tong, as expected of a real man, a good man. In terms of wit, survival, Xianxi advancement, and martial arts improvement, you are not a match for me. But in terms of distinguishing right from wrong, chivalrous, and carefree, I am no match for you. When these words were said, even Gu Han's expression changed. Although Lung Tong's cultivation was not low, he was only a saint. Why was he able to receive such high praise from the evil monarch? With the wisdom and experience of the crowd, they could naturally tell that June Moxie's words were spoken from the bottom of his heart. There was not the slightest bit of flattery in them. June Moxie's words were both praise and admiration for Lung Tong, as well as a conclusion for himself. Only he understood himself. June Moxie was clear that he had too many weaknesses. His personality was eccentric, egoistic, and extreme. Think about it. If I didn't have the Hong Jun Pagoda, this heaven-defying cheating device, in this world where the strong are revered and the fist is the strongest, I'm afraid I would have died countless times by now. If not for the existence of the Hong Jun Pagoda, June Moxie believed that with his perseverance, he would have a chance to raise his cultivation to the Earth Xian realm within this year. That was already an optimistic estimate. As for the peak of a 4th level Saint Monarch right now, even if he tore apart his bones and flesh piece by piece, it would still be impossible. Chapter 1186. He was really rebellious. He liked to break the rules and challenge authority. The more he fought against an opponent who was stronger than him, the more exciting and enjoyable it was. But with his personality, in this world where the strong ruled, he would definitely not live long. He might still be free and unfettered today, but he would be killed by an expert tomorrow. He did not distinguish between good and evil. He only cared about what he liked. The so-called big picture, chivalrous, and serving the country and the people were not in his eyes at all. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength had gradually grown stronger and finally climbed to the peak of his current level, he would have probably died a long time ago. He might even have been annihilated long ago. The only trace left behind would only be to be recorded in history as a typical negative example. Yes, June Moxie was such a person. He had long seen through himself. In fact, June Moxie was also a human. So, like all ordinary people, he had countless weaknesses, whether it was his personality or habits. He was not a perfect person. In some aspects, he could even be said to be evil. However, he also had an area that was very different from others. He possessed extremely powerful strength that allowed him to disregard these weaknesses. Perhaps it should be said that he was lucky enough to possess the Hongjun Pagoda, a heaven-defying super cheating device. He also had the knowledge from his previous life and the wisdom of his 2 lives. All of these weren't things that everyone could possess, and Jun Moxie met them. So his personality became his personality. His shortcomings were no longer shortcomings. Coupled with his indomitable willpower and the magical Hongjun Pagoda, his life became the life of a legend. The so-called legend was actually a wonderful experience written by an ordinary person, or even a person with many flaws, due to fate. After the final success of the emperors and founding monarchs, who would care that they had stolen their neighbor's chicken when they were young? Peeking at a girl bathing? Robbing someone else's things? Even if they knew about it, it was just an anecdote of a famous person that was used as inspiration, not as evidence for sentencing. There were countless hooligans in history, but the only one who was truly famous was Liu Bang. There were also countless people who had been humiliated by him, but the most famous one was Han Xin. Millions of people had sold plastic flowers, but only Superman Lee had achieved success. Right and wrong have always been judged by merit and demerit, not by right and wrong. This was the strangest phenomenon in human society. Everyone will criticize and resist this kind of practice. They can't stand too many things, but we use the past weaknesses of celebrities to educate ourselves and urge ourselves. A little rascal who stole a chicken would be chased by the chicken's owner, or even the masses, for several streets, and would be cursed with a torrent of abuse. Everyone despised him to the extreme, but when it came to the story of the founding emperor stealing a chicken, they would only laugh. Or perhaps they were lamenting that even heroes had times of helplessness. Moreover, he was very understanding and in agreement. At that point, this was the only thing he could do. Why was it that when the former was criticized, the latter would only sigh in approval? What kind of logic was this? The reason was simple, and there was only one thing: because the latter succeeded. Only success. As long as you succeed, then your shortcomings will become your shining points. Don't think that I'm just trying to scare you. This is the truth. No matter how ridiculous it may seem, it is the truth. Clothes fluttering in the wind, a cold and indifferent voice said, "Fighting against those non-humankind scums. How can I, Chu Chi Hun, miss out on such a glorious thing?" With a swoosh, a man in white appeared outside the tent like a javelin, his eyes like a hawk, staring at Jun Moxie. "Chu Chi Hun, you're here." Jun Moxie called out in surprise. Who else could it be but the king of assassins? The #1 assassin in Xian, the supreme assassin Chu Chi Hun. Chu Chi Hun smiled faintly and slowly walked in. Speaking of which, Chu Chi Hun's current cultivation base was only at the 3rd level of the martial venerable realm. Any random person in the tent was much stronger than him, so he was not worth mentioning. Even so, Chu Chi Hun's expression did not change, even in the face of so many powerhouses. His entire person was still like an unsheathed sharp sword. Unbearably sharp. A sword could be broken, but it would never bend. How did you get here so quickly? Jun Moxie was truly puzzled by this. News of the strange races invading the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had only spread not too long ago, and all the great families had yet to arrive. How was it that this Chu Chi Hun, who had always been a loner and never interfered with the mortal world, and should have been the last to receive the news, was able to arrive first? Previously, I received a deal worth 300,000 taels of silver, but this guy ran away. In the end, he escaped to a desert not far from here. Chu Chi Hun smiled. The muscles on his face were cold, as if they were carved out of ice. Although he was smiling from the bottom of his heart, in the eyes of the others, this king of assassins was still shivering. Even though he knew that this person's strength was not enough to pose a threat to him, he could not help but feel a sense of dread. This time, I thought that I had wasted too much time and was feeling depressed. Then I met with a natural disaster and was almost buried in that desert. But I never thought that I would encounter such a rare event. Chu Chi Hun smiled. I wonder if I'm late. Not bad, not bad. Old Chu, you came at the right time. Not late at all. Jun Moxie laughed and warmly welcomed Chu Chihuan in. Supreme Assassin? One of the saints from the three hallowed grounds grunted coldly and said, "He's just an Exalt realm expert, yet he actually rushed over here. Is he trying to give his life away?" Chu Chi-hun narrowed his eyes and stared at the saint who had just spoken. He said coldly, "Compared to everyone here, my strength is undoubtedly very low. Naturally, I can't be compared to all of you peerless experts. However, facing off against the outsiders, even if I don't have the strength to truss a chicken, I will still rush here. Whether I die or not is my own business. I don't care about my own life, but what does it have to do with you?" The saint was so angry that his face turned purple. He slammed the chair and was about to stand up. "Furthermore, I didn't come here because you invited me." Chu Chi-hun Lang snorted. "You're from the three holy lands, right? Hee. If there were only the holy lands here, then I wouldn't have come here even if a knife was held to my neck." Chu Chi-hun stared at the saint and said coldly, "Although I'm only a venerable, I might be able to kill a saint with my sword. If you have any doubts, you could try." Chu Chi-hun only had the cultivation of a venerable, but in the face of so many saints and saint emperors, he was able to speak with confidence and composure. He was in a state of mutual hostility and did not show the slightest hint of fear. However, he wasn't wrong. With his technique of assassination, it might not be impossible for him to kill a saint if he was determined to do so. "How dare you?" The saint shouted angrily. The dignity of a saint could not tolerate someone who was not on the same level as him provoking him, even if this person was the #1 assassin of the Xian continent. "How dare you?" Jun Moxie shouted angrily. His eyes were filled with a cold light as he looked over and said darkly, "You are just a saint. What right do you have to be so presumptuous in front of me?" Just now, this saint used his low cultivation to reprimand Chu Chi-hun, and now Jun Moxie used his low cultivation to rebuke him. This was retribution. No matter how weak the person he admired was, he would not allow outsiders to insult him. Tang Yuan was like that in the past, and Chu Chi-hun was like that now. The saint was so angry that his face turned yellow, and his chest was about to explode. But he just stood there, unable to say a word. Even though he dared to rebuke Chu Chi-hun, and even had the intention to attack, he did not dare to say a word when he was rebuked. Because the person rebuking him was Jun Moxie, Chu Chi-hun dared to rebuke him, but he did not dare to go against Jun Moxie. The difference between them was self-evident. "Sit down," Mo Wudao shouted angrily as he looked at the saint. "Things have already come to this. How can you still be in the mood to get rid of dissidents? Kill each other?" No matter what grudges Chu Chi-hun had with the Holy Lands, the fact that he was here today meant that he had the heart to do his best for the continent. "He is a hero. He is our friend." The saint sat down awkwardly, and his face darkened. First, it was Jun Dashao's rebuke, and now it was the responsibility of companion. It would be strange if his face did not turn black. "Mo Wudao Ha, well done. I've interacted with you a few times before, but this is the only time that I feel that there's a reason why the hermitage of the three holy lands made you the palace lord." Jun Moxie praised. Mo Wudao smiled bitterly, but did not reply. "Hermitage? Where's the hermitage now?" There were only ruins covered by rubble. Buried in there were countless corpses. Those were all their family and friends. The moment they thought of this, the hermitage felt as if a knife was twisting in their hearts. It was a pity that the main culprit, Zhang Luan Hui, had escaped in the previous battle. Although it was only his soul that had escaped, he was still alive. Now that the continent is on the brink of collapse, we can no longer care about our personal grudges. In this lifetime, we probably won't have the chance to take revenge with our own hands. This regret was undoubtedly the common regret of everyone from the three holy lands, and also the greatest regret of their lives. Jun Moxie held on to Chu Chi-hun's arm and walked in. His eyes, Lang looked at the people around him and said, "Everyone, from now on, there will be a large number of people coming to help us in the battle. Those who are coming are either supreme martial artists or Shun Xian, or Tian Xian, or Earth Xian. Their cultivation may not be worth mentioning in your eyes, or they may be existences like ants. But please remember, all those who are here are true men who want to do their best for this continent. They are all true iron-blooded men. Their hearts are redder than all of you, and their blood is hotter than all of you. I will not allow anyone to insult them again, not even a single word or a single sentence. If anyone dares to say something like that again, then there will only be one result: death. Chapter 1187. The third chapter. When he said the last three words, Jun Moxie's eyes were fixed on Gu Han's face. Gu Han said lightly, "Manor Lord Jun's words are exactly what I wanted to say. If the people from the Holy Lands do something similar, then there's no need for Manor Lord Jun to do anything. This old man will personally kill them. Those who are willing to come here are all heroes of the continent. Those who blaspheme heroes die." When the two of them finished speaking, the entire place fell into a dead silence. Just as the two of them had said, the people from the three holy lands had been preparing for this battle for tens of thousands of years and were already used to it. But if someone from the continent came here, it meant that they knew they were going to die, but they still came to die, all for the sake of the continent. This kind of person was the most worthy of respect. Then Jun Moxie smiled politely and led Chu Chihuan, the great assassin Chu, into the tent. Then he led Chu Chihuan into the tents of the Beast Kings. Then he arranged for Crane King and the rest to stand guard for Chu Chihuan so that he could improve his strength and peace. Seeing that Jun Moxie had taken out many miraculous pills to help him improve his strength, Chu Chihuan's face changed. Chu Chihuan's face instantly changed. "Jun Moxie, what do you mean? Do you also think that I'm not strong enough? Not qualified to come to this battlefield?" Jun Moxie smiled lightly. If it's someone who's used to smashing people with logic at this point, you would probably say, "I'm giving you this pill not for Chu Chihuan himself, but because I hope that the Supreme Assassin can be more effective in killing more outsider scum." I wonder if you'll be more willing to accept this kind of explanation. However, Jun Moxie will always be Jun Moxie. This was the case in the past, the present, and the future. I also gave you the pills that day. But, old Chu, you didn't talk nonsense like this. He looked deeply at Chu Chihuan and said lightly, "Could it be that the current Chu Chihuan is no longer the Chu Chihuan of the past?" Chu Chihuan was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly laughed and said, Good. Jun Moxie will always be Jun Moxie. As expected of the king of assassins that I, Chu Chihuan, acknowledge. Just these words of yours make me feel very comfortable in my heart." Since Jun Moxie was still Jun Moxie, Chu Chihuan was naturally still the Chu Chihuan of that day. Since I owe you, I might as well owe you more. These pills want me to accept. It's good for me to improve my strength. No matter what, I'll be able to kill a few more alien scums. Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian took the pill and swallowed it. A moment later, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the afternoon. The sky was dark and hazy. Jun Moxie, Gu Han, Mei Xuan, Mo Wu Dao, and 7 or 8 other leaders were drinking tea in a tent. Although the atmosphere was a little heavy, it could still be considered harmonious. Just at this moment, a mournful cry of a crane rang out from the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. From this sound, it was clearly the cry of 10 Xian cranes at the same time, a warning. Immediately after, the Xian cranes that were in charge of guarding the area also let out long cries at the same time. Enemy attack. The cry was still ringing in their ears. Jun Moxie and the rest had already appeared outside, looking toward the south. But the south was completely calm. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Everyone was surprised and uncertain in their hearts, and they guessed one after another. Could it be that another huge change had occurred? Tian Fa Xian Crane would never joke around with the sound of a warning, but it was clearly very calm. Just at this moment, Gu Han, Jun Moxie, and Mei Xuyan frowned at the same time. The three of them were far stronger than the rest. At the same time, they could vaguely sense that in the far north, there was a series of explosions. There are people fighting about 2,000 li to the northeast, and the battle is very intense. It should be the work of peak experts. Jun Moxie's face was solemn. The range of his divine sense far exceeded that of ordinary Xian cultivators. His hearing was also the best. First, he faintly heard a sharp cry coming from the northeast. Northeast? How could it be that direction? Gu Han and Mei Shuiyan were shocked. They naturally did not doubt Jun Moxie's judgment. But that was the direction of the mainland. Right now, all the peak experts of the mainland were gathered here, or in the process of gathering here. This was a troubled time. No matter how pressing a personal grudge was, it should be temporarily guarded. How could there be people killing each other? And how could the two sides cause such a commotion? Just as everyone was puzzled, another strange tremor came from afar. Everyone felt the ground beneath their feet tremble slightly. This time, everyone's expression changed. Although the tremor was very light, the place where the fight took place was thousands of miles away. People couldn't help but think, if such a feeling could be felt in such a faraway place, then how tragic must the scene of the fight be? In this world, which expert has not come? Gu Han muttered to himself as he looked to the northeast. We can feel it even from here. Then the strength of the two sides must be really frightening. To be able to cause such an earth-shattering commotion. Could it be that they are saint-level experts? Everyone here was a top expert. They all knew that to be able to cause such a huge commotion, the two sides were definitely not ordinary people. A fierce battle taking place 1,000 miles away could actually be sensed by people who were 1,000 miles away. Although there was indeed a factor of the three people's high cultivation, the two people in the battle might not necessarily lose to the three people who were at the top of the scene. In fact, they might even surpass them. If two people of Gu Han's level were to fight at the same distance, the sound might not be able to reach here. Suddenly, Jun Moxie's expression changed. Not good, it's getting closer. The battle between the two is quickly moving towards here. Everyone's expression changed. Now that the battle was dangerous, a great battle could break out at any time. Based on the strength that these two people had displayed, they were the top experts of the Xian continent. If they could participate in this great battle, wouldn't it be a great help? But on the other hand, with the abilities of these two people, if they were to become enemies, the negative effects would definitely cause a great disaster. Let's talk about righteousness. We only hope that we can pull them into our camp. Then we will have two more great helpers. Mo Wudao reminded softly, but his voice was also filled with uncertainty. A battle between two people with such strength. How could it be stopped just by talking about righteousness? As long as there was even the slightest bit of arrogance on both sides, this great battle could not possibly end. At this time, a Xian crane flew over from afar. In an instant, it transformed into a 2-meter-tall brawny man. His forehead was full of sweat as he landed on the ground with a PU sound. He reported loudly, "Big sister, brother-in-law, in the northeast direction, there are two peerless experts fighting at the same time, and they are currently heading this way." "Got it," Mei Shuiyan replied. The brawny man grinned. The news had already been delivered. Leaping up, he transformed into a snow-white crane again and disappeared into the horizon. He did not even have the time to catch his breath. He immediately returned to the place where he was stationed and continued to closely monitor the development of the enemy's situation. The rumbling sound were getting closer and closer. Not only did the two people who were fighting not lose momentum, but they were even more intense than before. It was as if they wanted to shatter all the mountains along the way, completely shatter them. Advancing all the way here, everyone's expression became heavier and heavier. Judging from the momentum, the cultivation of either one of the two people fighting was much higher than the majority of the people here. El Dagu, in your memory, are there really such powerful experts in this world? And there are as many as two of them. Mei Shuiyan asked. As she asked, everyone's gaze focused on Gu Han's face. How could a powerful existence with earth-shattering might be a nameless person? Not to mention two of them, but no matter how hard they searched, they had no impression of any of them. There are. Guhan laughed bitterly. But as far as I know, there is only one person. One person? Who is that person? Everyone asked simultaneously. At this time, an extremely sharp whistle came from the northeast direction. It soared into the sky, and a few white clouds drifting across the sky were suddenly torn apart at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into nothingness. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Could such power really be achieved by a human? Then there were three strange dong, dong, dong sound from afar. Everyone felt as if their hearts had been hammered 3 times by a 10,000-pound hammer. Their expressions turned ugly, and they could not help but be shocked. This was obviously the sound of a musical instrument. But what kind of musical instrument could achieve such a shocking effect? Before everyone could regain their senses, there were 3 zhung, zhung, zhung sounds from the zither, one after another. Then there was another clear and long sound, as if a god was playing a flute with all his might. The entire world seemed to be split into 2 by this strange flute sound. As these sounds appeared one after another, a few people instantly recognized the identity of the newcomer. Their expressions changed as they shouted, 9 serenities and 14 masters. It's really him. Guhan sighed and said, that's right. The only person I could think of just now was 9 serenities and 14 masters. Everyone's expressions changed, especially those who had just exclaimed. These people were all people who had participated in the encirclement against 9 serenities and 14 masters hundreds of years ago. At this moment, when they heard the strange music, which seemed to be a mixture of several musical instruments, they immediately thought of this terrifying devil. This kind of strange music, this kind of strange power, and that magical instrument that could play several musical instruments at the same time, other than 9 serenities and 14 masters' unique godly weapon, the divine melody, there was no one else in the world that could do this. But wasn't the divine melody kept in the Misty Mansion? When did it get back in the hands of this devil? Everyone clearly knew that the 9 serenities and 14 masters without the divine melody and the 9 serenities and 14 masters with the divine melody were 2 completely different concepts. Chapter 1188. With the divine tune in his hands, he could unleash a unique sound wave attack that could ignore space and attack all the enemies he could see. At the same time, he could focus on attacking. He didn't even need to deliberately play. With a wave of his hand or a flick of his finger, he could unleash a sound blade attack that no one could defend against. If it wasn't for the fact that Misty Mansion had sent out all their forces to surround and intercept the 9 serenities and 14 masters, they might have ended up with nothing. The degree of terror of the 9 serenities and 14 masters far surpassed the other 9 nether young masters, apart from the 9 nether first young master. The Misty Mansion had over a dozen Saint Venerables and close to 100 holy Emperor young masters working together to attack. There were even a few Saint Monarchs holding the line, as well as over 200 experts from the 3 Holy Lands. With such a huge lineup, they were still crushed by the 9 serenities and 14 masters. They charged left and right like there was no one stopping them. In the end, it was the 2 Saint Monarchs from Misty Mansion who had been patiently lying in ambush, launching a sneak attack at the crucial moment and snatching away the divine tune of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. That was how they managed to turn the situation around. With the divine tune in hand, the 9 nether 14th young master was truly invincible under the heavens. With the support of the divine tune, it was definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. The 9 serenities and 14 masters used their 9 nether true chi to activate the one and only 9 nether divine tune. That power was terrifying. That was the strongest expert in the world. There was no such thing as one of here. Miao Qing Qing couldn't come out and could be ignored. With the divine tune, the 9 serenities and 14 masters was the strongest. Even without the divine tune, the 9 serenities and 14 masters was still one of the strongest experts in the world. On that day, after divine melody was accidentally lost, 9 serenities and 14 masters still charged left and right, killing their way out of the encirclement like a hurricane, making their attackers pay a huge and almost unbearable price. The chase lasted for tens of thousands of miles, and there were no less than 1,000 interceptions along the way. In total, there were more than 100 life-and-death battles. Finally, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who had suffered more than 100 fatal injuries, were forced into the Fa forest. Then, several experts who had been lying in ambush in the 9 Nether Secret Realm took advantage of the moment when the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters entered the Secret Realm to recover. He had successfully sealed it in one go. After that, they had to arrange for the 8 Saint Venerables of Fa to guard the place day and night. It was precisely because of this mission that the 8 Saint Venerables of that time were all crippled. One had to know that at that time, the 8 Saint Venerables were all at the peak of the Holy Emperor's level 4 cultivation. They were only a step away from the Saint Venerable realm. But he was tormented to such an extent by a 9 Nether 14th young master who had the hindrance of seal. The scariest thing was that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was still heavily injured and not at full strength. Even with so many negative influences, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters still had such strength. It was not hard to imagine how terrifying he was when he was at full strength. The hundreds of years of exhaustion did not only exhaust the 8 Saint Venerables, but also the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Most importantly, because of the exhaustion and the seal, the recovery of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' serious injuries was also very slow. Even when he escaped, his old injuries were still not healed. Moreover, in order to successfully break through the seal, he had lost almost 90% of his strength. But even so, even though he only had 10% of his strength left, he had still killed almost half of the 20 or so Saint Emperors surrounding him. Only then did he quietly escape. Above, it was the 9 Nether 14th young master without the divine tune. Now, with the divine melody in hand, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who was like a tiger that had grown wings and who was very likely to have fully recovered from his injuries, was actually evenly matched with another person. They had fought all the way here. Who was the other person? Who had such tyrannical strength? Judging from the sounds, the two seemed to have been fighting for a very long time. A long, gloomy howl suddenly cut across the sky. Although the actual distance between the source of the sound and this place was more than 100 miles, the ghostly and gloomy aura that came from the long howl still made everyone's hair stand on end. What kind of monster are you? This was the roar of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. That voice was actually filled with incomprehensible incredulity, as well as indescribable depression. It was as if something strange had happened, and even he could not understand it. The voice came from afar, and everyone was very curious. Who was the other person? How could he cause the domineering 9 Serenities and 14 Masters to ask such a question? While everyone was wondering, another strange howl resounded in the sky. The place where the sound came from was obviously much closer to the location of the Allied forces' camp. It had been 100 miles away before, but now was only about 60 to 70 miles away. What an amazing speed. In just a few words, it had moved more than 30 miles. At this moment, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters seemed to have discovered something. He suddenly cursed and shouted anxiously, "Is there anyone in front? A bunch of idiots. Hurry up and get out of the way. Don't let the thing I am chasing come into contact with anyone. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." This voice was full of urgency and extreme anger. Everyone was stunned. Why would the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters say that? He did not even know who was there, nor did he know the cultivation level of the people here. Why was he shouting so anxiously? Why? Only June Moxie frowned and shouted sternly, "Everyone, pay attention. Once you discover someone coming from the northeast, no matter who it is, dodge with all your might. No one is allowed to come into contact with them. No one is allowed to fight. Just run away with all your might. No one is allowed to disobey." June Moxie made a prompt decision and immediately gave the order. The Beast Kings didn't hesitate after hearing this. They immediately commanded their respective armies and roared, carrying out their orders without hesitation. Mo Wudao frowned and said, "Manor Lord June, isn't it too rash of you to give such an order just because the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters shouted from afar? If the strange races launch an attack at this time, and our formation is not in order, how are we going to face them?" June Moxie laughed contemptuously and said darkly, "Don't you hear the urgency and fear in the voice of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters? Don't you understand what this means?" Mo Wudao was stunned. To think that even the 9 Nether 14th young master has to shout so anxiously, even using such threatening words. Do you think that the 9 Nether 14th young master is someone who would shout like that? June Mo Xie continued to laugh coldly. Mo Wudao's face broke out in cold sweat. He immediately realized the seriousness of the situation. The 9 Nether 14th young master was someone who wouldn't even make a sound, even if he was slashed by thousands of swords and blades. But now, he was yelling so urgently, even going so far as to threaten the person in the distance. Just what was it for? The answer was obvious. The reason why the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters shouted so is obvious. The human body is definitely very helpful to the thing that he is chasing with all his might. Then, Lord Mo, I would like to ask you, what is it that the human body is more helpful to? June Moxie snorted and asked, since the human body is beneficial to him, I believe it is not a good thing for the original owner of the body. You don't even realize this, and you still want to question me? What are you trying to do by delaying the time of this important matter? Even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters is worried about something. Who here dares to say that they can deal with it? Or are you confident that you can deal with it, Lord Mo? June Moxie sighed and said, "It is not a bad thing for you to look at the big picture, but you should consider whether you are doing something bad with good intentions. Why are you so stubborn? Could it be that you are such a person who cannot be praised? Previously, I said that you had a point as the palace lord. Now, it seems that I, June Moxie, have made a mistake." Mo Wudao's face turned red, and he did not know how to reply for a moment. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came closer and closer to them. In the whistling sound, there seemed to be a strong sense of excitement. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' divine music was played even more urgently and tightly. It was almost no longer a melody, and only a lot of long notes could be heard. The shouts were also getting more and more urgent. From afar, they could already hear the sound of wind breaking through the air, as if he was trying his best to stop something. June Mo Xie and Gu Han looked at each other, and the two of them hurried over. Mei Shuyan looked at them worriedly, and took over June Moxie's position as the commander. She immediately gave the order to arrange people to avoid the unknown disaster. June Moxie and Gu Han were both at the level of Lord Saints, and their movement speed was extremely fast. In an instant, they were already 20 to 30 miles away, and they saw the scene of the fierce battle. When they saw the fight with their own eyes, even the two of them couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air at the same time. Before they saw the truth, they knew that the situation was very serious, but they could not imagine what they would see. Now that they saw it, they still did not know what they were seeing, because everything he saw was just too strange. The battlefield was tumbling, and the crushed stones on the ground were all turned into powder, floating in the air. Behind this fierce battle, there was a long line of mud and sand that stretched for hundreds of miles, and it was slowly calming down. Without a doubt, that was the battlefield where the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters and the monster had fought all the way here. As far as the eye could see, it was a flat plain. It was hundreds of miles long and almost tens of feet wide, but there was not a single piece of crushed stone the size of a human head. It was as if a yellow river had suddenly appeared in the middle of the sea. In the battlefield, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters waved the divine music in his hands and released thousands of ear-piercing sound lines. Using both his hands and feet, he formed a black whirlwind in the air. Just as he started to spin, He appeared in another place. In front of him was a humanoid object. As for saying that it was a humanoid object, it was because the thing that the 9 Nether 14th young master was facing had a complete humanoid form. It had arms, legs, and a head. But this thing's head did not have any eyes, ears, mouth, or nose. It had a face, and it was just a flat plate. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.